There's an undeniable truth: knowledge is power. It can be the sword that strikes down an enemy, or it can be the very thing that kills you. Zachary quickly gathered firewood, trying to distract himself by thinking about trips with his new girlfriend and family back when he was a kid. He firmly tossed aside the flimsy, weak branches, suddenly feeling like a reluctant woodcutter. Zachary stretched his limbs for a moment, figuring his dad must have gone to buy wood too, though he had to admit, being alone in the woods like this wasn't all that bad. He let out a weary, internal sigh, thinking it was actually nice not to have to deal with Hannah's friends anymore. They had been a tight-knit group for so long that he always felt like an outsider. Tyler, who was a friend of Hannah's, though not really a friend of his, loudly criticized the chaotic mess on the ground. "Hurry it up, guys, who even set up this tent?" David, Izzy's boyfriend, quickly took the blame. "Oh, sorry, that was me. Izzy didn't know how, so I had to help her out." Izzy walked up with their gear and said calmly, "Relax, Tyler, this is supposed to be a fun camping trip for all of us. You want something sweet to eat?" Tyler looked impatiently at the clearing in front of them. "No, I don't want anything. It's almost dark, we got here late, and we still haven't finished anything." Hannah, Jack's girlfriend, calmly reassured him, "Everything will be fine, just like last time. Plus, Zachary can help out too, he's really good at this kind of stuff." Zachary was the only one actually putting in any real efforts. "I'll help if I can," he said. She casually dumped the work on him, using the excuse that he had gone camping with his family plenty of times before, and Zachary didn't argue back because he was almost finished chopping anyway. Tyler also felt comfortable bossing him around like a servant. "Really? That's great. Then go find some more wood for the campfire, Mr. Woodcutter." Zachary walked over, carrying the gleaming axe. He glared at Tyler, sending a chill down the guy's spine. Zachary put on a polite, gentle smile and walked past him. As soon as he was out of sight, Tyler started barking criticisms, and Hannah just laughed it off, saying, "Your boyfriend is so tense." The whole group looked at Zachary with suspicion. But who is he anyway? Zachary successfully gathered a decent amount of firewood. "I think this should be enough." He tossed some of the smaller branches aside to lighten his load. He didn't really need that much wood since they were only staying for one night. Suddenly, he stepped on a strange, foreign object. A chill immediately ran down Zachary's spine. He was suddenly pulled into a completely bizarre space. "What the hell? What is going on?" Out of nowhere, a mechanical screen appeared, accompanied by a notification. "System initializing. Welcome to the multiverse." He furrowed his brows, trying to make sense of it. Multiverse. Zachary considered a few possibilities. Am I dreaming, or am I finally losing it? The system continued to function. Planet Earth scanning process complete. Gravity and unclassified energy are being adjusted. Because the size and energy levels do not meet the criteria, planet Earth will be merged with another planet to reset the geographic space. Spawn points will be randomized. Living organisms will be upgraded to ensure difficulty. The more Zachary read, the more confused he became. Upgrading living organisms. Finally, the screen flashed a notification. Connection to the multiverse system activated. He was so stressed he started breaking out into a cold sweat. Did Izzy put something in the cookies? "Hannah, David, can anyone hear me? Where am I?" Suddenly, a piercing sound rang out, followed by a notification. Initiating teleportation to spawn point. Error: Harold Urkaz is currently unable to teleport. You must use the spin wheel to survive. Behind Zachary, a sinister aura emerged. A giant monster was staring right at him. Zachary was terrified. "What is that?" It let out a roar, revealing rows of sharp, mutated teeth. The system notified, "Due to the massive power disparity between you and Harold Urkaz, the odds are in the opponent's favor. Harold Urkaz, 1100000 spin chance. Zachary, 1/100 spin chance. Whoever has the lower spin score will be eliminated." Zachary was in shock. What kind of insane odds are these? He flatly refused. "The gap is way too huge, I'm not spinning." But the system didn't care. Protocol SL34.572 follows Zachary's instruction. Spinning. He frantically pounded on the screen. "Wait, cancel it, what the hell am I even spinning for?" A ding sound echoed. Zachary's result was 96. He felt a temporary sense of relief, thinking that 96 out of 100 was about as high as it gets. At the same time, Harold Urkaz's 6-digit sequence began to move. Protocol SL34.572 follows Harold Urkaz's instruction. Spinning. Zachary wasn't even paying attention to the results anymore. He had already made up his mind, knowing full well that with a power gap like that, having a high score just wouldn't be enough. The sound from the spinning wheel was still tearing at his mind. Zachary thought of his loved ones he hadn't even had the chance to say goodbye to, and he couldn't stop blaming himself. "I didn't even get to say goodbye to my dad." Or Markinch, "God, I really am a terrible brother." He suddenly wondered when anyone would come looking for him, though Hannah's friends probably wouldn't care about Zachary anyway. He went numb, accepting the fate that he was going to die and lose everything. Zachary was filled with hatred for this godforsaken spinning machine. He gripped the axe in his hand, past the point of caring anymore. He had made up his mind. He wouldn't worry about the machine's probability anymore. His whole body tensed up. The numbers seemed to overlay onto Zachary's body. Give me a chance, just one. The wheel stopped at 91. The system displayed a notification. Congratulations, Zachary continues to exist. Zachary was dazed by the shock, having no idea what the hell was happening. I won. At the same time, Harold Urquhaz began to be erased. Harold Urquhaz's 91 spins were no longer available. Its massive body was hit by a powerful beam of white light. A glowing red vortex swirled and lunged toward Zachary. His right eye acted as a gateway, channeling the energy into his body. A series of screens appeared one after another. Conclusion protocol. Zachary continues to exist. Harold Urquhaz eliminated. Proceeding to optimize resurrection and leveling protocol for Zachary. Not long after, he was returned to a forest. Zachary groaned on the cold ground. He sat up in a daze, looking around. What just happened? Zachary checked his body, completely terrified. Did I pass out? I have to get back quickly. But it seemed like this place wasn't the same forest as before. His eyes caught sight of the strange vegetation in front of him. Where am I? The system appeared and explained briefly. Because the size and energy levels do not meet the requirements, planet Earth will be merged with another planet to restart. Zachary wearily clutched his head. It wasn't just my imagination, it was all a dream. He tried to find his way back from memory. Is this the right way back to the campsite? Zachary groped his way through the forest, which was both familiar and strange. After a while, he finally reached his destination. There it is. He saw the familiar travel van. I remember walking just nearby. Looks like they lit the fire without waiting for me. He called out loudly, "Hey, is something wrong with you guys?" Zachary froze at the meeting point. There wasn't a single soul in sight. He immediately sensed danger. A monster was leisurely gnawing on the cooler that the group had brought along. What the hell? Its bizarre appearance didn't resemble any creature on Earth. It let out a roar, creating a shockwave that pushed Zachary back. The monster lunged toward him. Zachary frantically gripped the axe in his hand. He swung it in a firm arc, and the monster was sliced through easily, though it still managed to leave a deep claw mark on his shoulder. He was truly surprised. I can't believe I'm this strong. Zachary began to connect the information with the display screen he had just seen. System initializing. Welcome to the multiverse. He recalled the anomalies he had just encountered, the monster. It was all too real. Zachary squeezed the wound on his bicep. It's not a dream, everything is real. He immediately decided to run. Where did everyone go? Help me. Zachary tried to get to the van, but the monster was right on his tail. Damn it, where did they go? I have to get out of here. Its speed was too formidable, so Zachary jumped to the side to dodge. The monster slammed straight into the van. This was when he suddenly realized the pattern. It's fast, but once it lunges, it can't change direction. His mind raced, quickly finding a solution. Got it. While the monster was still dazed, Zachary ran behind it and loudly baited it. Over here, come over here. The monster immediately turned and lunged toward him. He ran straight into the woods. It was going berserk, as if it had no sense of reason at all, taking long leaps to close in on Zachary. He was panting wearily, having lost quite a bit of blood. Zachary led it to the exact spot where he had been teleported earlier. Sure enough, the ground began to shake again. He furrowed his brows. His hands were shaking, but he immediately denied it. I'm terrified of facing death, but no, this isn't fear. The forest shook even more violently. Power suddenly surged within Zachary's body. It was anger. He roared in defiance, "Come on, kill me." The monster lunged frantically. Zachary, already knowing the pattern, easily dodged it. It smashed straight into the rock at the base of a tree. The monster quickly recoiled, growling and looking around to find him. Zachary had climbed onto a nearby hill at some point. He aimed straight for the vertebrae on its back and brought the axe down hard. Its spine was severed instantly. Zachary kept swinging the axe repeatedly. The monster roared in pain, and blood splattered all over him. Compared to the monster from earlier, this one was nothing. Each strike of the axe was precise, crushing its spine. As he kept hacking away, a magical surge of power flowed through him. The system notified, plus 100 Nessus coins. Zachary was exhausted. He dragged himself back to the campsite, his wound still bleeding. As he walked, he kept calling Hannah's name. Is anyone here? We need to. He let go, dropping the blood-drenched axe. Zachary dragged his body along the van. He finally touched the door handle. He collapsed exhausted, right in front of the van door. Zachary only had one single wish, that was to go home. Zachary woke up dazed. The bright sunlight was beaming down. He pulled his battered body up, shaking his head. Zachary looked down at his blood-stained hands and exclaimed, "Oh God." He fumbled for his phone. What time is it? It was 8:47 a.m. Zachary's eyes widened in disbelief. He screamed in astonishment, "I slept for 3 days." Afterwards, Zachary got into the van and treated his own wounds. Where had Hannah and everyone else gone? 3 days had passed without a single clue as to their whereabouts. The gear was still in the same place. He fumbled for a while before finishing the bandage. I have to face the truth. If they haven't come back yet, they're probably already dead. Zachary walked around looking for information. What is going on? He climbed up a branch. How could my body heal so fast? If it were before, I would have died, but I'm still alive. He had tried to reach out to the outside world, but there was absolutely no cell service in this forest. There was almost no viable way to leave. The car was out of gas. Zachary retrieved his axe, the most useful weapon he had at the moment. He recalled the bizarre things he had seen earlier and the monster. What is this? Are they aliens, or is Earth being invaded? he began to worry about his family. If this forest had been transformed, what would happen to the world outside? Zachary thought of his tearful younger sister, Kenzie. He was filled with determination. He had to return home. He tried to climb higher, gripping the handle tightly and driving the axe blade deep into the tree trunk to create a foothold. Zachary cast his gaze into the distance. A vast forest stretched out before his eyes. If only there were a way to get back. He couldn't believe it, a vast ocean with no land in sight. Am I on an island? He furrowed his brows with hatred. Damn it, what have you done to my world? Zachary loudly cursed the damn system. No sooner had he finished speaking than a blue interface appeared. A series of screens rushed forth one after another. Born to Destroy eliminated the first monster in the world, all stats plus 10%. Surreal Reaper killed a composite leader alone in the world, all stats plus 5, all stats plus 10%. Lucky Draw successfully performed a lucky draw during a monster battle, luck plus 5, luck plus 20%. Giant Slayer killed an enemy 5 levels higher alone, all stats plus 1. Heir of David killed an enemy 10 levels higher alone, all stats plus 2. Power Progression killed an enemy 25 levels higher alone, all stats plus 3. Leviathan Slayer killed an enemy 50 levels higher alone, all stats plus 5, all stats plus 10%. Explorer reached level 10, strength plus 1, resistance plus 1, intelligence plus 1. Zachary was bewildered. What is this? He stared blankly at the screen. Is this me? The system panel appeared in detail, showing every parameter. Name, Zachary Atwood, level 16, race, human, earth, titles, Born to Destroy, Surreal Reaper, Lucky Draw, Giant Slayer, Heir of David, Power Progression, Leviathan Slayer, Explorer. Strength 31, dexterity 25, resistance 27, vitality 27, intelligence 29, wisdom 29, luck 44, free stats 30, Nessus coins 5100. He grew increasingly dissatisfied. Great, so it turned this world into a game, huh? Zachary explored further. I'm level 16 already. Is it because of that camera? Almost all my stats came from these titles. He noticed a window, infinite potential quest, reach level 25. Reward, unlock the bone-splitting head skill, kill 4 heralds and an infiltration leader within 3 months. Special reward, 10 E-rank Nessus crystals depending on the outcome. Infiltration Master, confront infiltration enemies and defend the base for 3 months. Reward, base upgraded to town, receive the mayor title. He noticed a red pillar of light in the distance. I guess that red beam is an infiltration zone, but where is the base? The system appeared, requirements met to create a base. Create now. Zachary was hesitant. A base. He instinctively looked down at the makeshift camp behind him. Having a place to call home wouldn't be bad, better than being out there fighting monsters. After a moment of consideration, he decided, all right, create it, create base. The screen flickered for a moment. Zachary was surprised. That's it. Congratulations, you have successfully built a base. Suddenly a voice rang out. What are you doing here? Zachary immediately went on high alert, his killing intent flaring up. What the? You're not human. He instinctively stepped back and slipped off the tree. A creature narrowed its single eye to look down at him. And you are not one of my kind either. Zachary tried to regain his balance while falling. He managed to grab hold of something in midair, but immediately paled. What he had grabbed was the long, writhing body of a python. It immediately coiled tightly around him. I let my guard down. The python squeezed frantically, trying to tear Zachary apart. It was lightning fast. He scolded himself while looking for a way to escape. It looks like a game, but it's not. I can't let my guard down around here. If I want to be stronger, I have to risk my life. Zachary let go with one hand, grabbed the python's head, and squeezed with all his might. I'm not dying here. He slammed its head hard against the tree trunk, making the snake vomit blood. Just then the branch snapped in two. Both he and the python fell straight down. Zachary gritted his teeth. The system only awards those who dare to hunt. He grasped the core rule: strength is the prerequisite for survival in this world. If I want to survive, I must become the strongest. On the other side, the strange creature silently thought, he doesn't seem to see things like this often. It hovered comfortably around the base, but that guy intends to choose a tree for a base. Vethabarak evaluated him wearily. It had supported countless entities from many races across the multiverse. Humans were always highly rated, but a treehouse was the stupidest thing it had ever heard of. Suddenly, a noise from below caught its attention. Zachary was frantically swinging his axe, blood splattering with every strike. Vethabarak was stunned and hurried over to check. Zachary was panting with exhaustion. He had chopped the python into many large and small pieces. He glared, pointing his axe at Abby, threatening. It thought sullenly, understood, perhaps I judged too quickly. You are quite talented. Zachary did not lower his guard. Abby introduced itself. My name is Vethabarak, or you can call me Abby. I was sent here to assist you in building the base. Zachary cautiously asked, my name is Zachary. How can you talk without a mouth? What do you mean by assist? Abby looked down with contempt. Excellent. Another idiot who skipped the tutorial. I am the support officer dispatched when you chose the base building quest. Zachary grumbled in frustration. Tutorial? What tutorial? That system didn't say anything to me. 3 days ago, it just left me alone in this forest. Abby nodded. So you didn't get a tutorial, huh? I figured. Immediately after, it screamed in panic. 3 days? This world only started 3 days ago. Did you mix it up with 3 months? Zachary confirmed firmly. Abby tapped its round head. If that's the case, then I'm interested. You must have been labeled as a defiant. Finally, I've hit the jackpots. Zachary frowned in confusion. What kind of title is that? Abby began to explain in detail. It said the world had just merged with the multiverse, a place comprising many galaxies that had existed for billions of years. Many others from Earth would be transported to the Rookie Village for training next month. Zachary hurriedly asked, "So my family is safe, right?" Abby confirmed that if they were in the Rookie Village, then yes. But it also pointed out a cruel truth. There were some who lacked the ability to absorb cosmic energy. Those who couldn't cultivate would sooner or later die because they couldn't withstand the threats. Zachary and Abby returned to the camp. He glared vigilantly and asked, "Are there any other Defiance? Does that mean I have to die too?" Abby did not deny it. Maybe, maybe not. Defiance are individuals who can increase their power far beyond expectations. The system thought you were a weakling and decided to kill you, but you defied its request. You refused your fate. Your case is very special and very intense. You have been given a wonderful opportunity, but it won't be easy. Zachary hoisted his axe onto his shoulder. "You mean almost dying because of that camera was an opportunity?" Abby corrected him. "Not me, but the system did. It knows better than anyone. In the grand plan of the multiverse, prophecies are worth paying attention to. The system hates the weak. You are just an ant before absolute power. Fail or give up and you will be punished." Zachary gritted his teeth, unable to hide his anger. "You mean I have to complete all the quests, kill all the monsters, and I don't have any other choice?" Abby offered sincere advice. "You are in a place very close to them. The system is watching you. Don't let them down." It suddenly spun around as if searching for something. After a moment, Abby whispered into Zachary's ear, "Also, you should try to complete the quest within 1 month instead of 3. That would." It hadn't finished its sentence when it was hit by a strong electric shock. Zachary stared blankly after it. A cold screen appeared. "Base administration has been reclaimed by the system." The speed was so sudden that Zachary couldn't react. What the hell? Suddenly his head throbbed. The scene shifted to a lavish party with an ancient style. Orgaz raised his glass coldly, completely out of place with the surrounding atmosphere. Aaliyah approached alluringly. "You don't seem very happy, Mr. Orgaz." "Smile, today is a happy day," she said coyly. Orgaz gritted his teeth. "Happy about what?" Aaliyah raised her glass toward the hall. "Your grandfather was just awarded the title of infiltration leader. It is an honor that everyone among us wants to obtain." His gaze stopped on someone. Orgaz immediately frowned. It was an honor they had to kill to get. The other person glared back. She teased, "Then I guess you should spend your time preparing for the match instead of partying with everyone." Orgaz turned and left. "The match? I thought you understood me better than anyone else." "I'm not fighting anyone. That game doesn't suit me. Just let those idiots be controlled." Suddenly, someone was affected by poison in their drink. Collapsed to the floor and the glass shattered. Immediately, people screamed in panic. "Who did this? Someone help him." Orgaz seemed to have known it all. They would throw themselves into the jaws of death. A beautiful early morning by a stream, the forest filled with strange creatures. The familiar monster was drinking water on the bank. The scene would be so peaceful if it were just a normal dog. A butterfly fluttered its wings toward the monster. It let the butterfly land on its nose. The insects brought by the system also looked very strange. The monster flicked its ear slightly, and the butterfly flew away. It sensed danger, so it fled in every direction. But Zachary was fast enough to chop its spine. The system immediately awarded a prize, received the title Demon Slayer, all stats plus 3% when fighting the demon race. Plus 100 Nessus coins. Level up. Zachary sat to rest right next to the monster's carcass. Finally, he had gotten used to these anomalies. Leveling up in this system wasn't too difficult. It seemed he still had a few spare points he could use to increase stats upon leveling up. He hadn't used the level 16 ones earlier. The system screen displayed. Level 17, Strength, 31 right arrow 41, Dexterity, 25 right arrow 31, Resistance, 27 right arrow 32, Vitality, 27 right arrow 38, Intelligence, 29 Wisdom, 29 Luck, 44 Free Stats, 0. He seriously considered, should I learn more about this world before choosing to raise stats? No, the fight with the snake earlier was because he was too careless. This time he had to be very wise. Zachary manipulated the screen continuously. I need to choose the stats that can help me the most right now. I'll leave the others for later. The parameters had changed significantly. He clearly understood the current situation. Life or death was just a breath away. Zachary lay down and let his mind wander. Only 25 days left in the first month. Was what Abby said true? There must be some reason it revealed it to him. He still remembered the sentence clearly. Also, you should try to complete the quest within 1 month instead of 3. Zachary squinted in thought. That was definitely why the system punished it. He couldn't help but exclaim at the injustice. Whether completed in 1 month or 3, the reward was the same. Life is truly suffering. However, he also realized he had a chance to explore ahead while everyone else was still in the Rookie Village. Zachary took a sip of cool spring water. He couldn't waste any time. He drew his axe, hoisted it onto his shoulder, and continued to look for new targets. Right, gotta get back to work. Night fell very quickly. Zachary sat alone by the campfire, using monster meat as food. He took the opportunity to check his titles again. Almost all of his titles were related to being the first person to do something. He opened a series of screens reviewing the titles: Born to Destroy, Surreal Reaper, Leviathan Slayer. Zachary took a big bite of meat. He quickly concluded, when building the base, he wasn't allowed to receive any support materials. That meant there was someone out there who had completed the quest before him, a defiant like him. Zachary couldn't help but wonder, if one snake could turn into such a powerful creature, then how strong were the others? He speculated while searching in the system. Surely the base would sell items to help him get stronger, or at least help him find his family. Zachary scrolled quickly through the screens. Everything had to be bought with Nessus coins. Each time he killed a demon dog, he only got 100 coins, and the snake got him a few hundred. He paused before an item, his eyes lighting up. It was the teleportation function. It could teleport people here, or better yet, he could teleport home and leave this island. But the price was truly enough to cost him his life. Teleportation cost 10 million Nessus coins. That number was like a rock crushing Zachary's head. 10 million Nessus coins. He considered and calculated seriously. He would have to kill a lot of monsters to afford it. There was no way he could kill monsters to earn that much. But what about the quests? He had identified the path ahead. Through the quest shop there were many options. If a rookie was already that strong, he had to try. He had to bet everything on it. He came to a conclusion. He had to save up Nessus coins. Zachary took another bite of meat. I have to use it for the right purpose. He decided to spend his money, and there were only two things he could afford: the Heavenly Eye skill for 3,000 Nessus. A stream of energy from the universe revealed basic biological information. It would help him identify information about the creature in front of him, hopefully pointing out an effective way to kill it. The compressed maternal energy gathering magic array for 3,000 Nessus. The array slowly collects cosmic energy from the surrounding area and converts it for the wearer. When wearing this necklace, he will absorb strength from monsters every 24 hours, increasing his energy while he sleeps. I might not be a follower of the righteous path, but there's nothing forbidding me from stealing their skills. After a moment of meditation, Zachary stood up, gripping his axe again. This is taking too long, better get back to butchering a few more. From that point on, he spent most of his time hunting. Whenever he found prey, he would easily take it down. The same went for when they found him. Rain or shine, Zachary never rested. These footprints had only just appeared. With every battle, he learned more: how to swing his axe with the proper form, how to block an attack, how to use his new skills. He mastered the use of the Heavenly Eye. So you're a demon dog, huh? A blue screen appeared above the monster's head. Species: demon dog, faction, demons, title, Azrazak Legion. He set up many temporary shelters around the island in case he couldn't make it back to his base in time. Zachary's life became a repetitive cycle: hunting, fighting, killing. He had killed hundreds, even tens of thousands of them. Every time he leveled up, he had to kill even more. His strength increased significantly, until the point where the demon dogs were no longer worthy of being hunted by him. They used to be prey, now they were just target practice. Level 23, Strength 59, Agility 39, Resistance 42, Vitality 48, Intelligence 29, Wisdom 29, Luck 44. Less than 5 days left until the end of the first month. At the same time, at Orgaz's luxurious mansion, Rydell stormed into the office. Orgaz cheerily raised his glass. Rydell, it's good to see you. Tell me, how far along is the invasion landing? Rydell furrowed his brows, losing his patience. You know the answer, if it's such a bother for you to read the reports. He sneered, not caring in the slightest. Then what are you going to do about working under me? A commander's job is to issue orders. Come, sit down, you look so tense. Rydell flatly refused. I beg your pardon, but I will stand while I speak, sir. He glared at the glass of wine in Orgaz's hand. Are you drunk? Orgaz gritted his teeth and growled. Why are you rambling? Is there anything else I need to do? Our unit has stopped invasion operations for weeks now. Rydell suddenly flashed a cunning, grim smile. He pushed a report forward. You're right, then sign this for me and you can do whatever you like. Orgaz immediately took out a pen. Your cousin Kevin is taking the post of expedition commander. Why not? Rydell left satisfied. Thank you, commander. I am certain your orders will be carried out immediately. As soon as Rydell left, Orgaz broke into a devious grin. In just a few weeks, I'll be out of this dog kennel for good. Back with Zachary on the deserted island, he carefully tracked the signs on the ground. His eyes were those of a seasoned predator. He found a demon dog that was yawning and stretching. Zachary gripped his axe tight. I'm still not paying enough attention to my surroundings. I didn't spot it in time. It sensed the danger and stood up. Zachary was completely stunned. What? How did it? Suddenly, a giant creature lunged out and tore the demon dog to pieces in an instant. It was 5 times the size of a normal one. Zachary didn't dare to breathe. It tore into the carcass with brutal frenzy. The demon hound sniffed around searching. It abandoned its half-eaten meal and paced back and forth. Unexpectedly, the demon hound accelerated and lunged toward his location. The demon hound's eyes widened in surprise, because Zachary had already bolted. He sprinted with all his might. What the hell is that thing? Harold, it's even more dangerous than those other monsters. Am I supposed to kill it? Its claw is as big as my arm. He quickly made a decision. He had to return to base. He needed a concrete plan to kill it. A crackling fire lighting up the night immediately put Zachary on guard. 2 different species of monsters were communicating about something. He was shocked. Are they talking? The scene was truly bizarre. Zachary carefully hid behind a large tree to eavesdrop. What the hell? The bipedal creature is roasting meat. He concluded that one looked more intelligent. Did they come looking for me? Will they reveal the location of my base? He quickly activated his heavenly eye skill. Just then, they noticed Zachary's presence. Species Imp Faction Demons Title Azrazak Legion. Species Demon Hound Faction Demons Title Azrazak Legion. He immediately jumped to his feet. Damn it, it saw me. The imp quickly launched a dark orb. Zachary realized the danger was imminent. It saw me, he cursed under his breath. Damn it. Zachary put all his strength into clashing with the imp. It quickly bounced behind him. Zachary's eyes remained vigilant. He felt another threat nearby. The demon hound suddenly launched a frontal attack. It overpowered him in both strength and stamina. Its sharp teeth were craving prey. Zachary struggled to push it away. Get off me. Then he quickly extinguished the flames burning on his shoulder. What kind of fire is this? Looking at it, it seemed like any other flame, but in reality, it was gnawing at his soul. The imp on the side was extremely excited, while the demon hound looked at him like a tasty piece of meat. Zachary suddenly realized the danger of his situation. There were 2 monsters, and he only had a broken axe left. If I can't take down these 2 monsters, I'm not worthy of the opportunities I've been given. He lunged forward, taking the initiative. The imp simultaneously cast magic. Zachary dodged while nimbly moving forward. The demon hound jumped, opening its huge mouth. He quickly grabbed it by its body. The demon hound was still bewildered. Zachary let out a roar to gather his strength, and then pinned the monster to the ground, after which he delivered a terrifying punch to the demon hound. He was using pure physical strength. Every strike carried shocking power. He drove his fist straight into its throat. The demon hound was nearly defeated. The imp wore a grotesque, creepy smile. It ambushed Zachary from behind. His arm felt like it had frozen, and his whole body was paralyzed by pain. Zachary's mind was a mess of thoughts. Back then, he only thought it was luck. The flames gradually engulfed him. The demon hound, not yet defeated, wanted to finish him off immediately. Galactic energy, a substance that separates the multiverse. Ever since the system arrived, fate had wanted him dead from the very beginning. But this was also the moment when the galactic energy flowed within him. The compressed maternal energy gathering magic array only taught him how to sense it, while his personal skills helped him know how to use it. Everything depended on him learning and controlling it himself. The tongue was blocked by strange magic. Zachary's eyes were bloodshot and filled with crimson veins. He easily grabbed the demon hound's tail. You shouldn't have broken my axe. The imp also realized something was wrong. It gritted its teeth in anger, and didn't stop throwing flames at Zachary. He didn't hesitate, swung the demon hound in a circle, and let go as if throwing a ball. His eyes were completely devoid of warmth. The imp was just as bloodthirsty. Both of them collided like cannonballs, slamming into each other and exploding. Day 30, the final day of the first month. Wood chips scattered into the water. The imp and the demon hound floated on the river, the current striking the rocks with rhythmic force. Zachary was diligently carving something. He admired the results for a moment. That should do it. It would be better if I reached level 25 and picked a character class instead of doing this. But someone said I should finish the mission within a month. Even if I can't finish everything, that doesn't mean I give up. Anyway, the system is very risky to get rewards. I'll probably get another mission. He was extremely confident for the upcoming trip. Time to kill the second herald. Elsewhere, a hand rested on a railing. Another person appeared beside them. Orgaz offered a polite smile. Seems like a month has passed and we're still nowhere, right? Rydell didn't hesitate to reply. Yes, that's correct. He didn't stop but continued. But this is only the beginning. When the portal protocol is complete and put into use, we won't be able to meet the others in the guild anymore, and the real work begins. Orgaz looked down at the chasm and the massive horde of demons inside. How interesting. I can't wait any longer. Zachary was furiously fighting, engaging the monsters in hand-to-hand combat himself. He was blown away by a single strike. Zachary immediately got up to continue the fight. His gaze could not help but darken slightly. The massive monster in front of him was called a Vul, level 45. Zachary suddenly recalled childhood memories of fishing by the river with his dad. He turned to him and said, "You know, Zachary, every species of animal has its own special ability. Birds can fly, rabbits can run fast." The sound of the fishing rod drew both their attention. "Dad, I caught something." The rod was pulled taut. Zachary's father quietly added, "Fish are very sharp." He reeled the line in calmly, "But they don't know how to use traps or bait like we do. Even Stone Age humans knew how to use spears. The point here is that we catch them because we are the more advanced species. Because catching them helps us discover the extent of our own capabilities." 2 hours before the battle with the Herald, Zachary was making a trap. "You're right, Dad." He looked at his accomplishment. "I have plenty of spears here." Back to the battle, Vul was charging aggressively. Zachary became even more alert in his defense. He also realized his own strength. "I can't use pure physical strength to defeat it. The power gap between the two sides is immense." Vul lunged fast, trying to maul its opponent. Just one hit from it and he would die. Dodging the blow, Zachary thought of a plan. "I mustn't let it touch me." Zachary used a physical attack. A stream of red blood spurted from Vul, causing it to become even more aggressive. He looked on with golden-lit eyes, capable of channeling galactic energy into every part of his body. Zachary's arms bulged with muscular veins as he enhanced his physical strength. Vul didn't care and kept lunging forward like a mad beast. "Come and get me," Zachary ran quickly to lure it. "Come on." But he wasn't the chosen one. Galactic energy was limited, so he had to use it wisely, without allowing for a single mistake. Vul extended its long, sharp claws. Zachary's entire body was under extreme tension. "Come on," he tried to channel all his strength into his legs. His body suddenly launched high into the air. "Control the energy." Zachary looked down at the monster and muttered to himself, "Kill it." He swung his axe straight down with all his might. In another turn of events, a group of demons appeared before a massive rift. Advancing step by step, Orgaz glanced around and asked, "Where is Rydell?" One subordinate quickly replied, "He has already passed through the teleportation gate, Commander." His gaze flickered toward the back for a moment, but a second later he returned to his confident demeanor. "But no one else will be able to follow him." Orgaz flashed a mysterious and inscrutable smile. Meanwhile, the fierce battle in the forest continued. Zachary cursed in frustration. "Damn it, I've overused it. My body can't accumulate any more galactic energy. If I push it, my energy channels will snap." The monster was slowly closing in, but he couldn't stop. Zachary spotted a trap not far away. Almost there. The monster lunged forward in pain. Both of them had been playing a game of cat and mouse for a while. Zachary's eyes flashed. He didn't stop, but instead accelerated even faster. The monster was still hot on his heels. Zachary jumped at the perfect moment. He broke his steady path. The monster couldn't stop in time due to its momentum and let out a fierce roar. Its massive feet digging deep into the ground. Its eyes turned a glowing red with rage. Zachary wasn't entirely certain. Did it work? The monster fell into the trap, dying slowly in agony. Its eyes widened in terror. The system issued a notification. Level up, reach level 25, quest complete. Class selection feature unlocked. Zachary couldn't help but feel overjoyed. "I did it." After minutes of fatigue, he finally dared to relax. "I did it. Can you see that damn system I killed?" His words were cut short by a violent tremor. A pair of glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness. Zachary saw it clearly and swore, "Damn it." He was completely surrounded by a pack of beasts. In another castle, a soldier trembled as he looked at the person in front of him. "Wait." Orgaz swung his blade, decapitating the man above him. A dull thud echoed. He easily dispatched the small fries. A companion asked, puzzled, "How much longer do we have to wear these stupid armors?" Orgaz sheathed his sword and replied calmly, "Until I say so." Namies, the other one, whined. "Seriously, Orgaz?" The soldier said with his dying breath, "No, no way." Aaliyah's seductive voice chimed in, "Including me too." And the answer was no exception, especially for her. Orgaz commanded sternly, "I don't want anyone to know about your presence. The fewer who know, the better." Another person handling the remnants reminded him, "Think carefully, Orgaz. We won't receive protection from him anymore if we step through that gate." The remnant was tortured to death. He remained extremely calm, as if brushing off a speck of dust with nothing left. Orgaz glanced with cold, empty eyes and said, "Then just do it. I'm sick of this damn guild. The new planet seems much more interesting and safer than this place." His brows knit tightly together. All that remained was to meet the people on that planet. Zachary was struggling to escape the monsters. Damn it, they're everywhere. He glanced back, feeling even more desperate. Why didn't Abby tell me that killing a messenger would summon every damn monster on this island? This is bad. My internal energy is running low. I used up all my energy fighting that messenger. There's no way I can escape from this pack of monsters. They're going to tear me to shreds. Just then, a monster jumped forward to attack head-on. Zachary reacted just in time, escaping danger in the blink of an eye. He was at a disadvantage and in an extremely dangerous situation. Zachary tried to feel his body for a moment. His internal energy had recovered slightly after killing the other monster. Not much, almost nothing, but if I can kill them continuously, if I can absorb energy at the same rate I consume it. Zachary flashed a triumphant smile. Then I won't have to run from them anymore. Thinking this, he stopped abruptly and turned to face the aggressive monsters head-on. Zachary quickly finished one off and dove into the crowd of monsters, swinging his axe. I just need to kill them all. Elsewhere, a girl radiated intense killing intent. Rydell sighed silently. It doesn't matter what's holding him back. In Orgaz's absence, I am the commander. He immediately issued an order. Kevin, organize scouting parties. Something killed the messenger Urkaz. I want to know what that thing is. Kevin reported almost immediately that it was done. Rydell slammed his hand on the table, announcing, "Good, move on to the plan for our outpost. As soon as possible, we need to be upgraded." At that moment, information was just relayed. Someone was passing through the teleportation gate. The people in the room couldn't help but stir. Has Orgaz finally decided to show up? Who could it be? Steady footsteps entered the room. Orgaz and his men walked in proudly. His gaze stopped on the person opposite him. Rydell was no exception. Inside the forest, Zachary was gradually becoming exhausted. His arm bore a deep wound and a patch of skin was missing from his leg. The blood-stained axe dripped with every drop. His voice trembled slightly. I need to find one of my important supply sources. Zachary dragged his weary feet. That tree. He reached out and grabbed a branch, then swung his body up quickly. His perspective shifted, and the position was safer. Zachary was completely drained after a day of fighting. Morning dawned quickly. He slowly woke up dazed. It's been over a month already. The world still hasn't ended. What am I saying? It ended last month. He adjusted his gear slightly, then quickly slid down to the base of the tree. Zachary tried to feel a bit. The speed of his physical recovery was truly amazing. Even so, he still hadn't fully recovered to 100%. This journey will be very long, but once I get there, I'll be able to choose my class. A small sound suddenly rang out. Zachary's eyes were full of vigilance. Is someone following me? A demon soldier was scouting the surrounding. He slowly realized the guy's identity. Is that a demon? The demon sat down and muttered something. Silent kai virus visara tajit van melanva orgaz. The next second, Zachary lunged out like the wind. A dull thud echoed through the forest. He held his weapon firmly and said politely, I'll take this, thanks. Then Zachary hoisted the demon onto his shoulder and threw it into the woods. Night fell quickly. The demon soldier was splashed with water to wake up. He was startled and quickly shouted, Va-io vow. Zachary stopped his words with the sharp blade of his axe. He greeted him very politely. Greetings. The demon stared at him blankly. Human. Zachary slowly managed to gather a few details. So you can understand what I'm saying, then tell me how many of you are invading my world. The demon's status board appeared, Azan level 33 faction, Azrazak. He didn't say much and unleashed a threat. The demon was fuming with murderous rage. Azan spoke as if cursing the human. Zachary swore, damn it. He quickly ran away from the sudden explosion. Tattered rags fell, the ground was scorched red, and the surroundings were almost heavily affected. Did he absorb a massive amount of energy just to blow himself up? Just so I couldn't pry any information out of him. Zachary looked at the remnants and muttered with admiration, that's surprising. These demons will be very troublesome. Zachary was still huddled in the treetop, carefully observing whether the surrounding area was safe after the chaotic explosion. Several hours had passed since the demon scout turned himself into a human firework. Fortunately, no other reinforcements appeared to check the mess. Zachary jumped down to his camp, feeling a bit bitter because the scout exploded and took all the loot with him. Our protagonist was currently only wearing tattered cloaks and some bandages. He really hoped the demon would drop decent armor instead of leaving a giant hole. Zachary stared at the scorched earth, thinking that if he had known it would self-destruct, he would have looted its pockets first. He recalled the fanatic look in the demon's eyes, a guy ready to blow himself up just to get even with the locals. The explosion was loud enough to wake the neighbors, but fortunately, all his neighbors were either dead or in another dimension. The only bright spot was the shiny new axe. His old one was now just like a dull butter knife. Furthermore, the final major milestone had finally arrived. Zachary reached level 25, the divine number that unlocks power upgrades. A faint smile appeared on his lips. Survival began to feel like he was starting to win. But before opening the superpower gift box, there was still some chores to do. He opened the interface and bought the F-rank small-scale illusion array he now possessed. With a heavy thud, a large, crude crate appeared on the ground in front of him. He pried it open and saw a set of glowing purple stakes, noticing they were quite different from the last illusion array. Zachary moved around the perimeter of the camp, carefully planting the enchanted stakes into the ground. He drove the final stake into the ground, completing the circle. He stepped back to admire his work, eager to see how well this new defense system would function. The illusion array shimmered to life, and the stakes began to emit crackling purple energy beams. A powerful wave of magic power erupted from the center, sweeping over Zachary. As the system confirmed activation, a shimmering purple dome expanded until it covered the entire camp, trailer and all. From the outside, the clearing in the forest seemed to ripple and vanish from existence, replaced by an illusion of the intact, undisturbed forest. Zachary touched the shimmering boundary, amazed at how his entire base was now perfectly camouflaged. He breathed a sigh of relief, knowing he could finally focus without worrying about wandering demons. Having dealt with security, he focused his full attention on the main event, class selection. A blue notification appeared, congratulating him on reaching level 25 and asking if he was ready to choose. Zachary didn't hesitate for a second, tapping the yes button with a confident smile. His excitement was cut short by a red error screen demanding 6,000 Nexus coins to buy the Nexus connection button. Zachary cursed the system's greed, realizing this would wipe out almost all the coins he had earned with blood and sweat. He gritted his teeth and confirmed the transaction, praying this process wouldn't reveal his location. A beam of light shone on the ground, and a giant glowing button crystal appeared in the middle of the camp. He approached the strange monument, unsure if it was an interface or something more permanent. He tapped the side of the pedestal with the head of his axe, triggering another notification. The crystal flashed, and a new window appeared in his vision. He narrowed his eyes as the system notified him he had 5 distinct class options. A predatory smile spread across his face. The moment he had been waiting for had finally arrived. The first option was Warrior, a common class for those proficient in basic close-quarters combat. Next was Acolyte, another common choice focused on using basic magic elements. The third was Marine, a rarer class specifically designed for naval combat at sea. Then there was Demon Hunter, a rarer class specialized in locating and eliminating demonic threats. Finally, he saw Hatchetman, a rare class described as the lumberjack of the endless enemy forest. Zachary took a moment to process the list, satisfied that the options were more diverse than he expected. He noted that all started at F rank, which seemed to be the baseline for everyone in this new world. The fact that they could all be upgraded meant this choice would shape his future development. He knew this was a massive decision, and he immediately decided to skip the common warrior and acolyte options. In his mind, choosing a common class when rare options were available was a complete waste. He considered Demon Hunter, but worried that specializing too soon could come back to haunt him. He didn't like the idea of becoming useless if he ran into something that wasn't a demon. He needed a path that allowed him to deal with any threat the world threw at him, from bugs to monsters. The Marine class was easily dismissed. He had no interest in being stuck on a boat in the middle of nowhere. Only one option remained that was truly reasonable for his survival. He believed that the system would reward those who dared to take the biggest risks, and Hatchetman was the rare reward he deserved to receive. He wondered if it would lock him into using only axes, but with his current equipment, that wasn't a major issue. Zachary chuckled to himself, realizing that choosing a rare class wasn't just a smart move, it was a huge survival advantage. He squeezed the glowing Nexus node, feeling the primal power vibrate through the crystal and into his bandaged hands. Hatchetman, he declared firmly, his eyes burning with intensity as a blinding flash signaled his commitment. The system chimed, confirming his new identity and binding him permanently to the Hatchetman class. Notifications flooded his vision, granting him the full of class and rarefied being titles, each boosting his core stats, but one final notification left him stunned. He was named the world's first Trailblazer, a title that granted 5 extra points to every stat as his body erupted with golden energy. The raw energy of the stat increase coursed through his muscles and veins, and he gritted his teeth, enduring the overwhelming sensation as the system forcibly expanded his physical limits. As the system listed his comprehensive growth, Zachary collapsed to his knees, his body struggling to adapt to the sudden surge of power. He lay still for a moment, steam rising from his overheated skin as he gasped for air, trying to recover. He lifted his head, one eye flashing with a predatory golden glint, realizing just how far ahead of the rest of the world he now was. He opened his status screen, eyes widening as he saw his strength stat had skyrocketed to a staggering 92. And he stared at his hands in awe, calculating that his strength alone had jumped by 28 points in a single moment. He clenched his bandaged arm, and his muscles bulged enough to create a sonic boom through sheer physical force. A cold, dangerous smile played on his lips as he prepared to dive deeper into his newfound capabilities. He opened the class menu and was greeted by a list of incredibly powerful-looking skills, though each one was locked behind frustrating combat trials. Zachary stood tall, golden sparks continuing to dance around him, knowing that even with a rare class, the system wouldn't give him anything for free. He gripped his axe tighter, accepting that he would have to kill thousands more enemies if he wanted to master this new path. His silhouette loomed dark in the forest as he swore to show the invaders that there was a monster in this world far scarier than them. With 2 of the 5 required kills under his belt, Zachary turned his focus to the remaining heralds and their general. To the demons, this invasion wasn't a tragedy. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. True, things almost went south due to the foolish Ogress mistakes, but the tribes had finally put more competent individuals in command, like Kevoran, who was clearly enjoying the perks of his new position. While the monsters he brought did the dirty work of clearing the island, Kevoran just leaned back and watched the show. He honestly thought nothing on this island could touch him, while Zachary remained in the middle of the woods, not looking like a threat but just some guy doing chores. Kevoran was busy whining about a month of preparation time being wasted due to the general's tactics, knowing they had to hurry before other invasions on the planet started snatching up all the good loot. But sacrificing 10,000 slaves seemed to have paid off in Heaven's eyes. Kevoran wore the expression of someone who had just won the lottery. His scouts had just brought back news that made everything worth it. Deep in the mountains, they had discovered a massive vein of Nexus crystal. A treasure like that was worth more than most could imagine. It was a fortune greater than what the clan elders even possessed. As the head of reconnaissance, Keverin was the one in charge of discovering this treasure. And he had a little secret: not every shiny thing he found would end up in his superior's hands. It felt too good. He ordered his subordinates to set up camp because he was tired of walking. He found a spot to watch the sunset and asked Lyra what she thought, but she was still trying to adapt to the planet's bizarre weather. Grom had already set out a lavish table, complete with pastries and a red tablecloth. Kevorin invited Lyra to sit, telling her to drop the formalities and just call him by his name. Lyra was slightly surprised that he was taking a lunch break right at the start of a major invasion. Kevorin just flicked an insect away as if it wasn't worth noticing, bragging that he always made time for the truly important things in life. But he quickly grew irritated when more mosquitoes buzzed around their fancy meal, having gone to great lengths to convince Lyra to join this trip, and he didn't want it ruined. When a fly landed directly on his food, he barked at Grom to do something about the pests. He called for Grom again, but the silence made him freeze. Suddenly, Lyra gasped in horror and reached for her bow. The atmosphere shifted entirely. From above, Zachary lunged down and smeared a guard's blood onto the ground. Lyra screamed, "It's a native!" Kevorin jumped to his feet, his hands glowing with energy. "Kill him!" Kevorin roared as an arrow whistled through the air. But Zachary was already moving, reaching for another blade to finish the job. He continued his assault, moving faster than any human should have been able to. Lyra's arrow was split in two by Zachary. Kevorin drew a massive black sword, prepared to finish this pest once and for all. The collision between the sword and Zachary's axe sent green sparks flying everywhere. Metal ground against metal as the two locked eyes amidst the chaos. Kevorin just sneered, seemingly amused that this planet actually had a human worth fighting, boasting loudly about crushing them like all the other insects infesting this planet. But Zachary was pushing back hard, even as dark energy began to swirl around them. Grom watched in shock as this native held his own against Kevorin. Two demons lunged at Zachary, trying to overwhelm him with numbers. But Zachary managed to leap out of the danger zone just in time. Zachary didn't hesitate, throwing a devastating punch that sent Grom meeting his ancestors in an instant. The impact so great it sounded like the demon's armor was about to shatter. He was sent flying backward by the horrific recoil as the air seemed to crack when the magical reaction from the demon armor exploded. Grom slammed into the ground in agony, the impact knocking the wind out of him and rendering him unconscious instantly. Kevorin didn't waste a second, charging forward with a slash that cracked the ground where Zachary had just been standing. He was genuinely confused as to how a mere native could keep up with him. Zachary tightened his grip on his axe, the wood creaking under the pressure as he prepared for the next round. Dark energy began to coil around Kevorin, his power spiking as he realized he was in big trouble. A blast of amplified dark energy shot through Zachary, causing him to scream in absolute agony. While he was distracted, a purple-fletched arrow whistled in from the side, striking home and burying itself deep in Zachary's shoulder. He gasped for air, the combination of shock and the wound starting to take its toll. Kevorin loomed over him, sword raised high, ready to finish it. Zachary looked up, eyes wide as he realized just how much danger he was in. But he still managed to bring his weapon up to block. Sparks flew as the two weapons locked. Kevorin couldn't believe it. This planet had only been integrated a month ago, yet this guy was this strong. Zachary reached out and grabbed Kevorin by the head, causing the demon to let out a choked sound. Zachary's hand was like a pair of pliers, his raw strength terrifying the scout noble. He swung his axe in a wide arc, aiming to end the match right there. But Zachary realized he couldn't land the killing blow if the woman nearby kept pestering him with incessant arrows. Zachary paused his attack, tilting his head just in time to let an arrow graze his cheek, knowing that one moment of distraction with the demon in front of him would mean death from those arrows. Zachary jumped back to create distance, breathing heavily. He wiped the blood from his face, never taking his eyes off his opponent. The two stood still for a moment, panting under the blood-red sky. Grom was still clutching his stomach in the background, clearly unconscious. Kevorin admitted, "You're quite impressive for a lowly human. I've heard of humans crawling up from the bottom of society. Outcasts, trash that wasn't even allowed to survive the integration phase. Those too weak to even qualify to step onto the path of cultivation. Small and meaningless like the mosquitoes I loathe so much." Kevorin explained that people like Zachary were the ones who fought until even heaven itself had to acknowledge them. "We call them Defiers, those who challenge fate. And it seems you have more potential than most of them." Kevorin continued, "It's a pity that someone like you has to die here." But because Zachary dared to challenge him, Kevorin had no choice but to bring his weapon down. He swung the massive sword horizontally, forcing Zachary to duck to avoid death. Zachary slid across the rocky ground, trying to keep his distance from that dark energy. He threw himself forward, his axe clashing against Kevorin's armor once more. Zachary gritted his teeth, knowing that one more mistake would mean his death. Zachary's axe slammed into Kevorin's chest, but the impact only created a massive shockwave without budging the demon. Kevorin stood firm as a mountain, his patterned armor glowing as it absorbed nearly the entire force of the blow. Zachary was thrown back by the magical recoil, sliding across the rocky terrain and cursing the demon's superior armor. Refusing to stay down, Kevorin roared and charged vanished again while Zachary prepared a lethal counterattack. As the demon rushed forward, Zachary thought fast, grabbing the entire banquet table and hurling it straight into Kevoran's face, disrupting his rhythm and sending him into a blind rage. The demon's face twisted in fury and sudden confusion as he realized this human wasn't easily defeated. A heavy impact sent Kevoran staggering back through the ruins of his own camp. Not giving him a chance to react, the protagonist circled behind him, and then launched another thunderous blow, sending his body flying like a cannonball backward. Seeing his commander in danger, Aizen cried out in alarm as the battlefield was shrouded in smoke. A horrific collision echoed through the clearing as a magical explosion leveled a nearby tree. Kevoran barked at Aizen to focus, but that brief moment of distraction was all Zachary needed. Emerging from the dust cloud like a vengeful ghost, Zachary swung his weapon down in a fatal arc. Kevoran's eyes widened in sheer terror, cold sweat pouring down his forehead as he witnessed the brutal death of his subordinate. Zachary slammed his axe into the ground with bone-crushing force. The impact shook the entire area. Kevoran executed a sweep kick, throwing the protagonist off balance, and then grabbed him, pinning him tightly to the ground. They grappled on the ground, each fighting for the advantage to land the killing blow. Kevoran held the upper hand, but Zachary retaliated by driving his fingers into Kevoran's face with primal, savage strength. He squeezed tight, letting out a growl from deep in his throat. Kevoran's agonizing scream was muffled by the crushing hand, and in desperation, Kevoran shrieked for Lyra to shoot Zachary, not caring about his own safety in the face of death. Kevoran pulled out a glowing short blade, the cold steel promising death. With a brutal thrust, he drove the blade straight into Zachary's side. Zachary's agonizing scream echoed out, leading the demon to believe that final victory was within his grasp. His eyes locked on a single goal: finish off the mortal pinned beneath him. Zachary began to panic. His hand fumbled over the ground, searching for a weapon. Kevoran, despite being drenched in blood, continued to taunt Zachary with manic laughter, mocking whether this was truly the limit of a defier's strength. Zachary's hand finally gripped the handle of his axe, his resolve hardening with every breath. From above, the demon sneered, intoxicated by the advantage he imagined he had, his face a mask of empty arrogance, completely oblivious that they were both standing on the precipice of a deadly stalemate. Zachary silenced him forever with one final, bone-crushing strike, as a level-up notification flashed in the corner of his vision. The battle ended, leaving Zachary gasping for air amidst the corpses of his enemies. He tried to stand, but the arrow in his shoulder and his sheer exhaustion made him stumble. Lyra stepped out of the shadows, her bow already drawn and aimed straight at Zachary's head. The demonic archer stood cold and ready, her eyes promising a quick end for the human intruder. Zachary took another arrow, the impact making him cry out in pain as he struggled to maintain his balance. He looked at her with silent fury, his eyes burning with an unquenchable defiance. Lyra warned him to stay still, the pain of losing Kevoran stoking the hatred in her heart. Zachary looked back at her, his expression grim as he prepared for whatever was coming next. And in a single quick cut, the position of the blade shifted straight from Zachary's side into the center of Lyra's forehead, and as the adrenaline began to fade, it only left the agonizing pain from his wounds. Despite the danger, Zachary began looting Kevoran's corpse, hoping to find gear to help him survive the next encounter. Zachary checked the small, decorative bag he'd taken from Kevoran's body, nodding at its unexpected weight. When he opened the bag, a surge of magical energy exploded, bathing him in a warm, golden light. Looking inside, he realized it was a spatial treasure containing a massive, chaotic mix of belongings, the bag seeming to defy physics by holding an entire room's worth of items inside its tiny frame. Zachary found all sorts of things, from fruit baskets to high-end furniture, making him wonder if the demon was out for a picnic. Amidst the mundane clutter, he discovered a collection of glowing, multicolored crystals that looked very important. The system informed him they were F-rank Nexus crystals, packed with primal cosmic energy. The interface explained that these crystals were essential for leveling up and recovering after battle. Lifting one high, Zachary could feel the primal power vibrating inside the gem, like a miniature star in the palm of his hand. He checked his active quests and saw similar crystals listed as rewards for his fight against the invasion. Zachary began absorbing the crystal's energy, his body drawing in the power to heal the wounds from his previous battle. Half an hour later, Zachary had scavenged the best items from Kevoran's equipment, claiming the dark magic armor for himself. He tied the precious spatial pouch to his belt, an important trophy from his first major victory. A cold, satisfied smile appeared on his face as he assessed his new gear, feeling much better prepared. Although he stood in full armor made from demon loot, he decided Kevoran's giant sword was too cumbersome to use. He opened the system menu, checked his quest progress again, and evaluated. The quest progress was currently going quite well. Although a month had passed, the invasion resistance master still showed 0-3. Did he really have to conquer this invasion first? His axe mastery level wasn't very high either. It would be great if it counted the enemies he handled before accepting this quest. The road ahead was still very long. He had already finished off Gwilgi and the Barghest messenger, That left only the imps and one other type he hadn't encountered yet. Along with the leader of this invasion, he didn't know where the imp messenger was hiding and didn't even know what the remaining messenger was. So for now, there was only one choice left: the invasion leader. Let's see how you feel when your own territory is invaded. Panic erupted at the gate as the demon soldiers scrambled to respond. They had finally realized the chaos Zachary had left behind outside. The gate guard squad, completely oblivious, rushed blindly toward the source of the chaos. They couldn't even imagine what was attacking them. A backup squad rushed through the teleportation gate, swords drawn and ready. They hoped to meet an army, but only silence awaited them. The leading soldier slid to a halt, his arrogance vanishing instantly. The scene ahead was more horrific than any report. He looked around in awe. The efficient and brutal slaughter left him speechless. Bodies lay scattered across the ground, twisted and broken where they fell. Zachary retreated into the shadows, breathing heavily. His axe mastery was increasing, but attacking the general head-on would still be suicide. He looked down at his body, covered in mud and dried blood. Raw power wouldn't get him through that gate. Every inch of his body was exhausted. If he tried to break down the door now, he would be torn to shreds before seeing the general's face. With thousands of demons on the island, he needed a new plan. Picking them off one by one would take forever. He shifted his gaze toward the mountain. A stream of demons was moving continuously between the outpost and a cave higher up. Whatever they were doing, there couldn't be anything good. It looked like they were scouting or mining something important. While a few wandered around, the main force remained behind the walls, busy building a new city. Zachary observed them from the shadows. He wondered if they were just mindless products of the system sent to challenge him. But as they laughed and chatted with each other, the reality hit home. They weren't NPCs, they were real, living creatures. He almost wondered if they even wanted to be here. Maybe they were trapped in this game just like him. His eyes hardened as he pushed that thought aside. It didn't matter who they were or what they felt. They were on his island, desecrating his home. Empathy had no place in the struggle for survival. The only way he would talk to the invaders was through the blade of his axe. That was the only diplomacy they understood. He leaned against a tree to steady himself. He still had a family to find and a world to reclaim. If he had to become a monster to save his people, then so be it. He had already crossed that line. He decided to shift his target. Hunting the remaining heralds would weaken the general's control before the final decisive battle. When they died, he would return to take the head of the invasion. He turned and vanished into the forest. Tracking them wasn't easy. He spent many days crossing the island, checking every nook and cranny and vantage point. He continued his grim work, his axe mastery slowly increasing with every kill, nearly 200 down. The hunt took him to the rugged coastline where he slaughtered everything in his path. The count continued to rise. He raided narrow, cramped caves, leaving a trail of bodies behind. He was nearly halfway to his goal. Zachary hauled himself up a steep cliff, his muscles screaming with the effort. They had to be hiding somewhere. He finally reached the summit. The wind whipped at his cloak. The climb was worth it for the view. He paused for a moment to breathe and wipe the sweat from his forehead. He had been looking in the wrong place before. From up here, the entire island unfolded before his eyes. The red pillar of light of the outpost looked tiny from this height. A fleeting movement caught his eye. He squinted, focusing on a nearby mountainside. A giant beast was perched on a branch, its body cracked with glowing orange energy. It looked ancient and dangerous. Zachary stepped into the clearing, drawing its attention. He had found what he needed. The stone monkey let out a terrifying roar as Zachary used his judgment eyes to scan its stats. It belonged to the Azrazak tribe. He finally confirmed the last two heralds were a small demon and this pack of monkeys. It was time to get to work. The creature roared again, its mouth glowing with fiery heat. It wasn't alone. The whole pack lunged down the ravine, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Zachary didn't hesitate. He lunged forward to confront the first monster. A powerful slash sent the monkey flying. Zachary's mastery level soared with every swing. He slashed through another one, the count hitting 899. He was approaching a massive milestone and he could feel a change coming. Zachary stopped as the last beast fell. These stone monkeys were very territorial. That was the reason he hadn't seen them until now. If he wanted to find the next heralds, he had to push deeper into the heart of the mountain. Piercing screeches echoed through the ravine. More were coming, and they sounded very angry. The entire pack of creatures lunged down the cliff, their heavy bodies shaking the earth. They roared in unison, a wall of stone and fury charging straight at him. They clearly didn't like strangers. Zachary gripped his axe and readied himself. He was fully prepared to see what these monkeys were really made of. He had been fighting non-stop since the system appeared. Stuck in a loop of blood and steel, he tore through the first wave. The count passed 900. Unconscious violence began to become his second nature. At first, the system meant nothing to him, just data and death. 921,939. He was so close he could taste it. His mind drifted to his friends and family. Was anyone still alive in the world he used to know? But the more he thought, the more he realized the old world was gone. Now there was only the hunt. The more he fought, the more everything began to fall into place. He was becoming something else. Every kill brought him closer to a truth he couldn't quite grasp yet. 982995998, 999. Only one left. A blinding burst of light erupted as he hit the mark. 1000. He did it, Axe Mastery 1000. The world around him dissolved into blinding white. This was no longer the mountain. Zachary found himself standing on a floating island. A majestic white city appeared in front of him. He was in an illusion. He looked down from the edge of the cliff, his eyes widening in shock. This was far beyond anything he had ever seen. Below him, an army of stone colossi and winged warriors marched through the clouds. It was a scene from legends. Each soldier radiated an overwhelming aura. He was just a worm compared to them. Zachary stared, paralyzed by the sheer scale. He could feel primal energy vibrating in the air. A figure appeared in the middle of the island. A man stood calmly amidst the chaos. It was a bald man in a humble cloak holding a simple iron axe. He looked like an ordinary woodcutter, but his aura was immense. The mysterious woodcutter took a deep breath, focusing everything into a single point. He was preparing for something. He raised his axe high above his head. Purple lightning crackled around his body as he channeled terrifying power. With a slow, deliberate slash downward, he swung. The movement was intentional, carrying the weight of the entire world. The world shattered. A massive purple energy rift tore through the sky and earth, splitting reality itself. Zachary watched in silence. This wasn't just a slash. It was the fundamental laws of the universe being rewritten. The shockwave rippled through the illusion, throwing everything into chaos. Its force was unimaginable. A system notification flashed in his mind. Tao Seed absorbed gravity. He had achieved a breakthrough. The illusion exploded in a final burst of light, and Zachary was thrown back into the real world. A massive crater remained where he had stood. Zachary gasped, his hands trembling as he gripped his axe. The power he had just witnessed was still flowing through his veins. Zachary leaned his back against a tree, completely drained. Around him lay the shattered corpses of the monkeys. Tao, he had heard of it in legends and myths, but never thought it could be real, something he could actually touch. The system confirmed his new status, Gravity Tao Seed, a permanent buff to strength and endurance. This changed everything. He didn't fully understand the implications, but the feeling of power was undeniable. He was no longer just a mere survivor. Zachary gripped his axe, breakthrough energy spreading through his arm. It felt like he had finally glimpsed a fundamental truth of the multiverse. In his mind, he saw that mysterious woodcutter again. The weight behind that man's strikes was transcendental. He realized his previous technique had many flaws. Compared to the illusion, his previous slashes were just fantasies, while the woodcutter's slash was the only real thing. Zachary focused, trying to channel that same essence. He needed to feel the absolute weight behind every swing. He poured all his new awareness into the next attack. With a thunderous boom, a massive rift tore through the ground, leveling the stone monkeys in its path. The force was terrifying. Zachary stood atop the carnage, gasping for air. Even though this attack was powerful, he knew he had only scratched the surface. The man in the illusion had something even greater. The image of the slash splitting the world still haunted him. It had a depth he hadn't grasped yet. Zachary looked at his reflection on the axe blade, eyes burning with new ambition. Could he reach that level of power? The mysterious woodcutter remained a silent, steady goal in his mind, a benchmark for what was possible. A system notification appeared, accompanied by a title that left him stiff. Child of Tao, the third person in the world to reach enlightenment and create a Tao seed. Zachary's eyes widened as the words third person sank in. He wasn't the first. There were two others ahead of him. He thought about the world outside the island. The tutorial had ended for everyone else a month ago. Out there, the muscular guy who survived and the others must be fighting their own battles. He wondered how many natural geniuses like that blonde girl were perfectly suited for this new cultivation world. Had the government started rebuilding, had organized organizations taken over territories while he was still alone here, the thought gnawed at him. He had pushed himself to the limit, believing he was in the lead. Knowing he had been surpassed by two others hurt his pride. He checked his status, level 28, Gravity Tao Seed. Strength and endurance had soared, but it still wasn't enough. Looking out at the ruined mountainside, Zachary was determined to push harder. When the dust finally settled, only the strongest would decide the order of the new world. Zachary narrowed his eyes, checking his progress on the system interface. He was so busy surviving, he almost forgot the current numbers. 9,952 logs out of a total of 10,000. Zachary Atwood took a short rest, leaning his back against a giant fallen tree. He was only a few slashes away from completing his goal. Meanwhile, deep inside the demon base, the weapon rack was ready for a life-stealing battle. Agraz, one of the demon leaders, looked surprised at the latest update. The messenger reported that Kevoran was dead, likely by the same mysterious group that had eliminated the other heralds. Agraz tried to maintain a serious face. When the soldier suggested they were dealing with an elite squad of indigenous warriors. Standing behind the giant guard Ilver, Agraz couldn't help but burst into laughter. he was delighted that his rival had finally kicked the bucket. He pretended to cough, saying he must be allergic to something in the planet's atmosphere. He admitted he was slightly sorry to lose Lyra in the chaos. She used to spy on Kevron for him, but he didn't lose any sleep over it. He ordered a squad to check on Cinderain and Kyugo, still maintaining the role of a concerned commander. Deep down, he only hoped the natives and the remaining rivals would kill each other so he could claim exclusive control. Ilver warned him he was laughing too much, but Agres just told him to shut up. Back in the deep forest, Zachary continued his work, pushing the log count to 9,999. He wiped the sweat from his face, focusing on his final task. He aimed his axe for the final slash. The counter hit 10,000, and a terrifying burst of energy erupted from the log. Purple lightning coiled around him as his body absorbed the cosmic reward, pushing his power to new heights. With his enhanced stats, he headed toward the peaks where energy concentrated more intensely. He began to climb vertically, fingers gripping the rugged rock. He climbed the cliff easily, his body feeling lighter and stronger than ever before. Reaching a sturdy ledge, he looked down and spotted a group of creatures gathering below. He shouted to signal his presence. They all looked up in unison. The pack of stone monkeys let out a series of shrieks and lunged straight toward the mountain. Zachary didn't budge. He was itching to test his new strength. He gripped his axe tight, the blade beginning to ring with a brilliant, sparkling light. The monkeys leaped through the air, closing the gap with a giant jump. Zachary swung his axe back, cosmic energy gathering around his arm as he prepared to strike. He whispered the primary skill, chop. The head of the axe glowed white-hot and expanded as it sliced through the air. A massive shockwave tore through the mountainside, wiping out the troop of monkeys in the blink of an eye. The remaining ones were thrown backward, their bodies unable to withstand the force. He continued to climb, convinced that this mountain range was hiding something far more important than a few stone monkeys. He was sure of it. The energy in the air was so dense it couldn't be natural. The peaks above were covered in strangely glowing mist that pulsed with power. The creatures here were also different, stronger, more disciplined, and acting like coordinated guard units. Observing from the rocks, he realized these monkeys were reminiscent of the human-like demons he had faced. They moved in tight packs, patrolling the area with purpose. Each group had a larger commander leading them. He continued to sweep through, leaving a trail of broken rocks behind him. Even these elite squads couldn't stop him anymore. Day after day, he climbed peak after peak, scouring every nook and cranny of the mountain range. As the sun set, he stood alone on the summit. He had cleared the area, but the next heralds were still nowhere to be found. Zachary narrowed his eyes, focusing his gaze downward. He had spent days searching the summit, only to finally realize he was looking in the wrong place. The heralds weren't on the mountaintop. He peered down into a massive crater and spotted a glowing white flower. That was where the energy was concentrated. Without hesitation, he stepped off the cliff's edge and began his descent into the valley. As he approached, he remained on high alert, his mind racing through potential strategies. But then he froze completely, sensing a massive spike of energy. The plant was even more impressive up close, pulsing with deep veins of purple and red energy. He couldn't believe the scale of it. It looked as if it had been growing there for centuries. And then he saw him, Cinderain, a level 58 stone monkey herald, sitting in absolute silence at the base of the plant. The creature's eyes suddenly snapped open, flashing with a dangerous golden light. Zachary didn't waste a second, initiating a surprise aerial ambush and bringing his massive axe down with all his strength. But the herald was faster. He caught the enchanted blade with his bare hands, the force of the impact cracking the ground beneath them. Zachary was stunned. He had never seen anything just catch his axe like that. Cinderain let out a low growl, his hands clamping onto the metal blade like a vice. The beast's eyes were full of bloodlust, showing no fear of the human's weapon. Suddenly, a burst of energy erupted from the herald, forcing Zachary to brace himself. Zachary realized he was overextended, his axe was stuck, and he was losing his leverage. With an explosive shove, Cinderain sent him flying backward. Zachary slid across the crater's rocky floor, digging his heels in to stop his momentum. He had to admit this was a real opponent. Even with his strength tripled since the last boss fight, he was still being pushed back. He tightened his grip on the axe handle, knowing that between his new class and his Dao seed, he should have had the advantage, but this monkey was born different. Looking at his opponent, he knew this fight would be 10 times harder than the one against Vul. He took a cautious step forward, regaining his stance, and Cinderain followed suit, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. Zachary broke into a sprint, his speed becoming a blur as he closed the gap, but the herald didn't wait for him to arrive, charging straight into the fray as well. The beast stomped its feet onto the ground, channeling cosmic energy directly into the earth. Giant, razor-sharp stone spikes erupted from the crater floor. Aimed straight at Zachary's chest, the stone cracked and groaned under the herald's magical pressure. Zachary reacted instantly, his axe becoming a streak of light as he hacked through the obstacles. He leaped over the remaining debris, his eyes locked on his target. He lunged down from above again, but Cinderain moved to intercept him. It aimed its sharp hand straight at the protagonist's face, but was knocked aside by Zachary's axe handle. Immediately afterward, he followed up by punching the creature in the face. However, the monkey countered instantly with a claw swipe, leaving a bleeding wound on his body. The match grew increasingly chaotic, droplets of red blood splashing onto the dark wooden tree trunk. They traded dozens of blows in the blink of an eye, blocking, dodging, and striking in a frantic dance of death, the plant's white flowers now stained with blood. As the fight escalated, Zachary broke into a high-speed sprint, a moving blur along the crater wall, clashing with Cindermane again, their movements so fast they left light trails in the air. Zachary realized one thing: the beast wasn't just fighting, it was repositioning itself to always stand between Zachary and the glowing plant. A dark smile spread across Zachary's face as he realized the monkey's fatal weakness. He didn't even need to aim for the herald, aiming for his precious plant was enough. Zachary poured all his strength into a downward overhead swing, banking on the beast's protective instincts, and as expected, the herald threw himself into the path of the blade, using his own back to absorb the full force of the blow to save the plant. Zachary poured more power into the strike, his eyes flashing with cruelty, thrilled that his gambit had succeeded perfectly. The axe bit deep into the herald's flesh, drawing a primal, agonizing roar that echoed throughout the valley. Cindermane's fingers continued to claw at the metal, his hand trembling in excruciating pain. Zachary couldn't help but respect the herald's determination. The beast knew the price and was willing to die for it, but respect didn't mean mercy. Zachary pushed harder, the clashing energy creating a blinding flash of light. The sound of hissing flesh and grinding bone echoed as the herald fought to stand his ground. With one final ear-splitting roar, Cindermane bellowed out to the surrounding mountains. The sound traveled for miles, an haunting signal echoing through the jagged peaks. Zachary's heart sank. He knew that roar, it was a call for reinforcements, just like the low-level stone monkeys used to do. Before he could land the finishing blow, a rock flew from out of nowhere, smashing straight into Zachary's head and sending him reeling. Zachary tumbled across the rocky ground, his momentum finally stopping near the edge of the crater. He staggered to his feet, blood streaming from a fresh gash on his forehead. This was his best chance, and he was losing it. He knew that if he retreated now, he might never get another chance to face a herald one-on-one. But when he looked up, the horizon was already filled with a sea of stone-skinned monsters rushing toward him. He cursed under his breath, knowing that charging back into that chaos wasn't bravery, it was suicide. The ground began to shake under the weight of hundreds of stone monkeys, their golden eyes flashing like 1,000 tiny stars. Realizing the battle was temporarily lost, Zachary turned and bolted toward a nearby cliff to find cover. He knew he wasn't in any condition to fight a war of attrition across the entire mountain range. Every step was a struggle, his body screaming in protest from the wounds he had already sustained. The thunderous footsteps of the horde were right on his heels, and his cosmic energy reserves were critically low. He spotted a cave mouth ahead, realizing that the noise he was making must have alerted every predator for miles around. He lunged into the darkness of the cave, the sounds of the pursuit echoing against the cliff walls. Zachary skidded to a halt, dust swirling around his boots. He looked back to see the first wave of the horde reaching the cave entrance, their roars filling the cramped space. He gasped for air, a desperate, frantic plan forming in his mind. He knew this was a gamble, but it was the only option he had left. If he wanted to live long enough to settle the score with the heralds, he had to change the rules of the game. He tightened his grip on the axe handle, channeling his last bit of energy into the blade. He needed a strike powerful enough to bring the whole place down. With a primal roar, he hacked into the cave ceiling, the impact triggering a massive explosion of rock and dust. Large boulders came crashing down, crushing the lead stone monkeys and sealing the cave entrance with a deafening crash. Zachary stood in the darkness, surrounded by dust and shadows. As the cave collapse settled, the horde's roars were also silenced. He found himself trapped in a small, sealed pocket of the cave, surrounded by darkness. The young man began bandaging his wounds, frustrated that even with his new strength, he was still being pushed to his limits. He inspected the debris, knowing that at least one of the two remaining heralds was very close on the other side. He groaned as he stood up, guessing that this place likely connected to the demon mines he had seen earlier. He gripped his axe and began walking through a narrow gap to find another way out. The path led him deeper and deeper into the heart of the mountain. He stepped into a vast chamber glowing with a strange, bioluminescent blue light. Touching the cave wall, he could feel cosmic energy vibrating right through his palm. With energy density this thick, he was certain the fourth herald was lurking somewhere in the depths. He continued his journey, scanning every shadow for traces of his target. A sudden sound echoed from ahead, causing him to stiffen. He quickly hugged the cliff wall, moving as silently as a ghost. Peering around the corner, he spotted something moving in the blue light. It was an imp. He knew that if one of these little creatures was here, its master couldn't be far away. The creature was cackling to itself, busy picking up glowing crystals from the cave floor. He watched the little monster dance around, completely unaware of his presence. The imp paused for a moment, checking its surroundings with a toothy grin. It was hoarding a pile of nexus crystals, resources so precious that an ordinary monster shouldn't have any. Zachary was surprised to see these actually had a use, but it also gave him an idea. He planned to follow the imp back to its source and find the herald's lair. But before he could make his move, a massive shadow lunged out of the gloom. A giant cave lizard clamped its jaws shut, snatching the imp out of midair. He could only stand and watch as his entire tracking plan was devoured right before his eyes. The lizard was a monstrous creature, its body covered in dangerous-looking glowing spots. It swallowed the poor imp in a disgusting, bloody gulp. Now the beast turned its golden eyes toward the much larger meal standing in the tunnel. It lunged forward with a fierce hiss, jumping straight at him. He didn't blink. One clean, powerful swing of his axe cleaved the monster in two instantly. He let out a sigh, shaking the lizard's blood off his weapon. He bent down to pick up the nexus crystals the imp had been carrying. There was no reason to leave good loot on the ground while he was here. He began scanning the floor for any trail the little monster might have left behind. A faint, sickly green vapor began to rise from the cave floor. Zachary held his nose, almost gagging at the imp's horrific stench of rot. Luckily, the smell was easy to track. He just had to follow the trail of rot through the tunnels. A sharp, rhythmic metallic sound began to echo from ahead. It was the unmistakable sound of a pickaxe hitting stone, ringing but clear. He had found the source. A group of demons was hard at work mining the cliff face. Zachary's territorial instinct kicked in. They were mining his nexus crystals, and he didn't plan on sharing. Zachary heard the grunting language of the demons echoing through the dark tunnel. He realized they were closer than he thought and braced himself for a fight. With nowhere left to hide, he decided to take the initiative. A group of purple-skinned demon miners was shuffling through the cave, fatigue weighing down their shoulders. They whispered to each other, complaining about the supervisor treating them like slaves. One of them waved away his comrade's warning, thinking they were far enough away to speak freely. He led them through the bioluminescent tunnels, still bitter about being accused of stealing crystals. He smirked, planning to find a rich vein and keep a few for himself this time. Suddenly he stopped, a cold, freezing sense of horror spreading through him. His companions began to tremble when they realized they weren't the only creatures in the dark. Before they could turn around, Zachary's axe descended in a silent, brutal slash. The remaining miners could only watch in horror as their comrade was cleaved in two in the blink of an eye. Panic erupted as Zachary lunged at the next one, forcing them to scatter in a desperate bid for survival. Zachary's eyes were burning with intense light, his face splattered with demon blood. He stomped forward, the sound of breaking bone echoing in the silent cave. A surge of energy followed his every movement as he hunted down the survivors. He cornered a red-haired miner, who only managed a painful moan before being caught. One heavy final blow ended the struggle before the demon could even resist. Another miner tried to escape, desperately hopping to reach the main chamber. He roared a warning for his master, Hugo, but a hail of blades pierced through his shoulder, pinning him to the cliff wall with a dull thud. Zachary leaped through the air, closing the distance at a terrifying speed. The miner only had time to reach out one last time before his life was snuffed out. Another clean slash, and the mining tunnel fell back into silence. Zachary landed in a pool of blood, his boots making a faint rustling sound in the absolute stillness. He exhaled slowly, knowing his covert plan had almost been exposed. He checked the area, hoping he had taken them out quickly enough to avoid triggering an alarm. He moved toward the light, his expression growing increasingly stern as he approached his target. When he peeked into the next cavern, he realized he had accidentally stumbled into the enemy's hub of activity. The massive cavern was packed with imps and elite guards gathered around a glowing toxic cauldron. Zers and the demonic shield knight immediately spotted the intruder, stunned to see a human had made it this deep. The multi-eyed imps scurried around the boiling pot, their faces twisted in confusion. Hugo, a level 44 herald, rose from his robe, his four eyes locked onto Zachary with murderous intent. Zachary did not back down. He stepped straight into the center of the room, ready to end the invasion. The herald let out a piercing shriek, releasing a surging wave of purple energy. A massive stream of fire roared through the cave, turning the air into a literal furnace. Zachary slid across the stone floor, narrowly avoiding the bulk of the magical fire. He didn't wait for a second attack, he lunged straight into the fray. His axe collided with the demon knight's massive shield, sending sparks flying with a ringing metallic sound. He poured all his weight into the strike, the heavy metal shield beginning to crack under the pressure. His eyes flashed with absolute focus, searching for the single opening to end the match. Zachary narrowly avoided a lightning-fast slash as Zers lunged to kill. Hugo shrieked at the assassin to finish the job, his four eyes wide with desperation. Zachary didn't hesitate, suddenly attacking Zers and driving his blade deep to eliminate the threat. Having lost his guard, the herald roared in agony and released a violent wave of purple energy. Zachary spun around just in time to see the entire cavern filled with the herald's unstable power. He leaped high, using the knight's massive body as a stepping stone. Purple flames roared around him, threatening to swallow him whole as he hovered in midair. He landed heavily on the ground, his mind spinning as he realized this wasn't ordinary fire. He observed Hugo carefully, realizing the heralds depended on range just like low-level imps. If he wanted to win, he had to close the distance and force the demon into close combat. He charged through the fire, the heat crackling against his skin as he pushed forward. With a roar, Zachary leaped toward the herald, his axe ready to deliver the final blow. A brilliant energy collision created a massive shockwave that shook the cavern walls. Zachary tore through the thick, swirling smoke, searching for any gap in the herald's defense. He realized the herald was so desperate it was willing to burn everything, including itself. His gaze fell on the boiling green cauldron, the toxic fumes making his head spin. Hugo wasn't finished, swinging his staff to unleash another concentrated blast. The explosion rocked the ground near Zachary, sending debris flying in all directions. Zachary spun quickly, his movements becoming a blur as he dodged the radiation bombs. Another explosion echoed through the cavern as the herald's power continued to surge. Zachary gritted his teeth, realizing he had been cornered with no easy escape route. He faced Hugo directly, who stood before the cauldron like a twisted priest. The demon smiled sinisterly, its multi-eyed face twisted in a creepy, confident grin. It released one final, massive blast of purple sparks, intending to incinerate Zachary on the spot. Hugo's smile froze when he saw a golden light rising from the heart of the fiery hell. Zachary charged straight through the flames. Energy from his armor created a protective barrier. He remembered the breastplate's previous owner and the brutal battle to claim it. The armor possessed a special ability to block and counter powerful attacks. He realized that defense mechanism also worked effectively against magical fire. He burst from the smoke like a shining meteor, his axe raised high above his head. He struck down with crushing force, the impact shattering the ground and kicking up a cloud of dust. Zachary stood tall, his hair completely singed by the heat, but his will remained unshaken. He coughed violently, blood spilling from his mouth as his body took the blast's impact. Thick, acrid smoke continued to fill the air, stinging his eyes and lungs. He realized the smoke from the cauldron was beginning to affect his focus and coordination. He saw the herald preparing to flee, trying to fly into the darker section of the cave. Zachary gripped his axe tight, refusing to let the target escape. After going this far with one final primal roar, he charged in a desperate sprint. He poured all his remaining energy into a terrifying slash. He glared at the fleeing demon, his golden eyes flashing with resolve. The axe blade swept through the air with a sharp crack that suddenly broke the sound barrier. The blade bit deep, slicing through the herald with clean, critical efficiency. The herald's body hit the floor with a wet thud, and a system notification confirmed Zachary had leveled up again. Zachary knelt, coughing violently as the green toxic smoke from the cauldron seared his lungs, and a quest update flashed in his vision. Surrounded by the shrill, mocking laughter of low-level imps, he realized he needed to escape this chamber before the smoke finished what the herald hadn't. He tried to cover his face, but the acrid air was unavoidable, blurring his vision and rapidly draining his strength. Fighting against the numbness spreading through his limbs, Zachary focused what little energy he had left on the source of the poison. He realized that if he didn't neutralize the cauldron, the entire cave system would become a giant, inescapable death trap. Nearby, the herald's defeated corpse sizzled on the floor as the energy around the chamber began to swirl out of control. Zachary forced himself to stand and took a staggering step toward the exit, his silhouette flickering before the gate's fatting light. He stumbled through the fog, his vision reeling as the inhaled toxin took full effect on his body. His breath hitched, his knees buckled, and his final reserves of strength abandoned him after the brutal, intense battle. With a heavy thud, Zachary collapsed into the darkness of the tunnel, green smoke swirling around his unconscious form. Not knowing how much time had passed, Zachary finally slowly regained consciousness. He tried to force himself up, but immediately another wave of discomfort surged, causing his body to collapse onto the ground once more. Zachary thought shakily, what kind of thing did the messenger craft? Why, I didn't even drink it, and it already made me vomit my guts out. But that's fine, it's mine now. These things won't help me right now anyway. First, I need to get out of here. Who knows how long I've been missing? Someone might come here to check the situation. With that thought in his head, Zachary started slowly leaving the area. Not long after, he encountered a lizard monster and gifted it an axe to the head. After taking down the monster, he headed toward the gourd tied to the side of a demon. The corpse was still exactly where he'd left it. Good, that must mean no other demon had passed this way. Without thinking much, he hurriedly grabbed the gourd and started drinking the water inside nonstop. After finishing, he comfortably sat leaning against the cave wall to rest. Thanks for this bowl of water. He said thanks and then turned his eyes toward the armor he was wearing. Good thing I have this armor. Its ability to deflect attacks saved my life. But the array providing energy for this skill is depleted and recharging very slowly. Looks like I can only use it once a day. Thinking, he took out a crystal from inside his spatial pouch. I didn't think about the fact that this crystal would recharge the armor. It needs more cosmic energy, just in case I run into more enemies. Immediately, the energy from inside the crystal began to pour into Zachary's body, making him feel noticeably better. Much better now. Finally, I feel like I can move without vomiting anymore. After that, he opened the system menu to check. I have a few points to distribute. What the hell, why can't I add points to strength? Have I reached the limit or something? But if so, that's too unreasonable. There's no way 175 is the limit of the multiverse, right? That man definitely had strength far beyond 175. That's impossible. Could it be because my level is still low? The limit could increase with my level. Or it could be because of my race, or it could be my class. Both are F rank, but I have no clue how to rank them up. Pondering for a bit, the protagonist felt a headache coming on, so he brushed the matter aside. Whatever, forget it. If I lose stat points because of this, I'll go crazy. And why don't I see points being added to luck? The only reason it increases is thanks to my titles. I hate this system, he sighed wearily. In another turn of events deep inside the mine, a group of workers were going to hand in the crystals they had mined. Among the three, there was a guy who wouldn't stop shaking, forcing the leader to remind him, "Stop shaking. She can smell fear." The other guy said shakily, "I can't do it. I know I didn't meet the quota today." The leader just reassured him, "It'll be okay, she's coming." Opposite them, the mine manager girl, along with two of her henchmen, had approached. She glanced left and right to observe the surroundings. This only made the group of workers feel more pressure than ever. But very quickly, she extended her hand forward and demanded, "Where's today's haul?" The leader hurriedly handed over the bag in his hand to her. She observed inside in silence for a moment, then dumped all the crystals into another bag. After she was done, she recorded the amount and called the next person up. This brown-haired guy stepped up shakily and said, "Manager I." On this side, the manager seemed to have guessed what he was about to say, so she interrupted, "Hand over today's haul. I don't need to hear excuses. The Azurzak clan has been blessed with this mine. I won't allow you people to waste it. Every delay gives other invaders time to consolidate their forces. Time to capture us and take this mine. Is that what you want? Are you a traitor to the family?" She used the pen in her hand to lift the worker's chin and continued, "Do you know what I do to traitors?" Thinking of this, the worker was panicked, hurriedly kneeling down on the ground. "Please don't. I swear I'll never hand in less again. Please give me just one more chance, please." Unfortunately for him, these pleas were not accepted by the manager. Let him be an example for anyone else who thinks of betraying us. Behind her, a soldier raised his sword high, intending to deal with this worker. But immediately after, he seemed to sense something and shifted his gaze to observe to one side. Sure enough, from high above, Zachary had been silently standing there, no one knew for how long. The manager shrieked, "We're under attack." From high above, countless lizard monsters began to appear. The blonde guy hurriedly pulled his companion to run, while the two soldiers, seeing this, also rushed forward to take down the monsters. Standing from high above, Zachary silently observed everything. That's really convenient. That woman seems to be the leader of this place. Taking her down will definitely slow down the demon's mining progress. But more importantly, that bag is definitely full of Nexus crystals. Those salamanders seem to need my help. Returning to the battle, just as a soldier was about to finish off a salamander, a stone flew in from afar, hitting him square in the head. The thrower was naturally Zachary. Nice time to get rich. Saying this, he dove straight down. He dove like a meteor onto the battlefield, directly confronting the female manager. The female manager turned in surprise, growling to ask who dared to interrupt her work. She spotted Zachary and immediately ordered her guards to prioritize killing him over the beasts. A soldier heard this and rushed to attack the protagonist from behind, but he had noticed him early. A clean, powerful slash pierced the soldier's defense with terrifying precision and ease. The guard fell backward in pain, dropping his weapon in the exploding chaos. Disgusted by the incompetence of her crew, the manager decided to take matters into her own hands. She unleashed a series of dark, thorny tentacles whipping through the air toward him. Zachary stood firm, preparing for the storm. As the magical vines rushed forward quickly, he swung his axe in a defensive circle, creating a vortex that pushed back the attack. Slicing through the magic bullets, he prepared to take the fight directly to the manager. The manager unleashed a powerful stream of magic energy, her eyes glowing with dangerous focus. Zachary watched in amazement as she deployed a shimmering barrier that reflected his own defensive skill right back at him. Realizing his signature move was being turned against him, he panicked and dodged the recoil. The collision between the two forces created a massive shockwave, forcing him to plant his heels into the ground. He barely managed to push back the rebounding energy. Feeling the terrifying weight of his own power, vines whipped around his legs, trying to pin him down while he struggled to keep his balance. The female foreman took advantage, knowing he couldn't counterattack without risking a direct hit from his own strike. A sharp, sudden pain erupted as he took the hit. His armor failed to stop the attack. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he was determined not to let the foreman see him crumble or waver. He poured all his remaining willpower into it, preparing to turn the tide of this brutal match. Zachary shattered the magical barrier with a desperate slash, barely avoiding a lethal strike from the foreman. But thorny vines instantly lunged forward, wrapping tightly around his body with suffocating pressure. He thrashed, trying to break free as the magical strands tightened and drained his energy away. The foreman mocked him as a petty thief, clearly delighted at his pathetic, bound state, and she bragged about handing him over to her superiors, confident that her trap had finally succeeded. Zachary ignored the sarcasm, his eyes still burning with an unquenchable light despite being heavily restrained. She continued to boast that he couldn't touch her, thinking she had total control. Suddenly, he channeled a burst of primal power, slicing through the vines with blinding speed. The smug smile on the foreman's face vanished instantly as the axe blade closed the distance. He delivered a heavy, decisive blow that shattered her composure and forced her onto the defensive. Zachary initiated a brutal aerial assault, while an elite guard suddenly lunged in to attack from the side. The horrific collision sent the guard falling, with no chance to recover. The foreman watched in horror, wondering how a mere human could possibly possess such power. He maintained the pressure, diving into the fray with the intensity of a terrifying monster. She realized his strength was on par with a general, and marked him as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Desperate to stop him, she decided she had to neutralize him before he caused any more chaos. She channeled her entire reserve of magic, unleashing a final, high-risk blast to stop him in his tracks. Zachary glared at her with cold determination. Refusing to back down from the incoming energy, the powers of both sides collided in a massive explosion, shaking the cave walls with chaotic, primal energy. Standing amidst the settling dust, he realized the miners had already fled the scene. With his cover blown, Zachary realized the demons would soon overrun the entire mine. He decided to abandon the underground route entirely and focus completely on hunting down the final herald. Taking a moment to bandage his wounds, he found a glimmer of hope in the recent chaos. Reaching into his loot bag, he pulled out the spoils he had risked his life to claim. The precious Nexus crystals were finally in his hands, making the dangerous raid well worth it. He turned his attention to the durable demon gear that had survived the horrific explosion. Noticing the fabric possessed rare reflective magic similar to his own high-end armor, he paused to consider the absurdity of wearing it. Weighing pride against survival and deciding that practicality always beats appearance, he pulled the red dress onto himself. Fully equipped with his bizarre new outfit, he prepared to finish the job. Zachary decided to head back through the collapsed section of the cave, hoping the local threats had dispersed. Checking his interface, he noticed a new notification pop up. The system revealed a new class quest, requiring him to walk 1,000 kilometers. He brushed off the distance as a minor challenge, confident he could complete it quickly. Suddenly his vision shifted, as a mysterious, high-level dynamic quest activated without warning. The system projected a grand objective, urging him to triumph and seize power. A fantastically glowing ancient tree appeared in his mind, radiating an enormous aura of ancient energy. He witnessed a ripe fruit fall from a branch, the sensory illusion feeling almost too real. Returning to reality, he took a breath. His resolve hardened into a single goal. He swore to claim that reward for himself. Even as the demon army tightened its siege, a massive pillar of light signaled the appearance of the legendary Ascension fruit, surprising the general when he realized the true value of this treasure. He recalled the fierce beast that had been blocking his search teams for years. He finally understood that the beast had merely been guarding the tree until the fruit was fully ripe. It turned out the monkey had played them all while clinging to the prize. The general watched in a rage, wondering how the beast had broken free from his mind control. Frustrated by the betrayal, he cursed the situation as his plans fell into chaos. He swore to make the beast pay for radiating its crackling, dark energy. Ordering the regiments to mobilize, he prepared to lead his troops toward the mountain. He turned to his cousin, ready to discuss the implications of this sudden divine proclamation. The general barked back at his cousin, firmly asserting that rank stood above blood. Ryle mocked the general for losing control of the beasts he had unleashed. He enjoyed the irony of the situation. He took pleasure in thinking about how the elders would hear this news. The general tried to silence him, declaring he would handle the beast problem personally. Ryle just laughed loudly, insisting that the general was completely incapable of fixing this mess. A sudden surge of power erupted between the two. As tension reached its breaking point, the general warned him about defying tribal law and angering their grandfather. Ryle remained calm, subtly implying that their grandfather was already fully aware of the current failure. He revealed that the elders had only appointed the general because they doubted his true capabilities. An official decree was issued, stripping the general of his command due to inexperience. The general snatched the decree, his rage surging as he read the content, and he stared at the document in shock. Realizing his power had been stripped clean, a pure, unadulterated fury swallowed him. his eyes flashing with unstable and dangerous magical intensity. Ryle remained calm and arrogant, suggesting his cousin retreat to safety while he handled the situation. He walked away from the general with a mocking farewell, clearly enjoying his new position of power. Walking away with a smug smile, Ryle prepared to claim the legendary prize for himself. Meanwhile, Zachary observed the entire drama from afar, his eyes locked onto the distant objective. He knew a direct attack was suicide, so he began mapping out a more cautious path. The system updated his quest log, emphasizing the time limit to seize the ripening fruit. With the location revealed, he prepared to outmaneuver the demons and claim the ultimate reward. Zachary realized the system was pushing for a large-scale confrontation between the conflicting factions. He knew the demons and the guardian beast wouldn't share the prize without a bloody battle. Observing the chaos unfold, he wondered if challenging them for the fruit was absolute madness. Despite the obvious danger of a suicide mission, he felt he had no other choice. The legendary tree glowed with enormous power, signaling a quest he couldn't ignore. He was determined not to let the rare treasure fall into the enemy's hands. With his mind locked onto the reward, he prepared to strike at the perfect moment. Knowing the fruit needed another 12 hours to ripen, he decided to stay calm. Charging in now would only make him a target for the demon armies surrounding it. As the demons marched toward the mountain, he planned to overcome them all on his own. Zachary knew he had to hide until the very last second to seize the fruit. He watched the demons from the shadows, hoping to take out the general while he was distracted. This was a high-stakes gamble. Failure wasn't an option if he wanted to survive. He moved through the dark terrain, fully aware that his entire mission depended on this moment. Despite the overwhelming odds, he kept a confident smile, ready to face whatever came next. The ground shook as he crossed the treacherous mountain path. Nearing the legendary prize, he gasped for air, feeling the massive energy radiating from the tree as it neared maturity. Chaos erupted nearby as the demon forces engaged the guardian beast in a bloody struggle. He watched the massive creatures tear through the landscape, their roars echoing throughout the valley. The tree glowed with a mystical light, signaling that the time for his final strike was near. The battlefield erupted as the demons and stone monkeys clashed in a fierce, high-stakes tug-of-war. Zachary observed the carnage, noticing that while the demons were temporarily gaining the upper hand, the outcome remained uncertain. He realized the demons were burning through their energy reserves while the monkey horde fought tirelessly. These stone guardians were persistent on their home turf, turning the entire mountain into a chaotic death trap. Watching the chaos unfold, Zachary knew this was the perfect distraction for him to act. A sudden shift in the air caught his attention, pulling his eyes toward a powerful aura. The general had finally entered the fight, cutting through the enemy ranks with terrifying, effortless precision. Zachary sneered, lucky that the high-level target had foolishly left the safety of his fortress. Seizing the moment, he sprang into action, hoping that being hornless would help him hide. He dove into the battlefield with lethal intent, ready to strike when the chaos hit its peak. Zachary dove into the middle of the skirmish, his bizarre outfit immediately drawing attention from a nearby demon guard squad. They were clearly confused by his appearance, struggling to process the sight of a human wearing such a distinct getup. The lead demon questioned his identity, but Zachary kept his head low to avoid unnecessary talk. His silence only made the guards more suspicious as they glared with growing hostility. He tried to stay calm and keep moving, hoping to slip through without a fight. The guard finally realized he was a human, shattering the illusion and forcing the situation to escalate. Arrows flew toward him, but Zachary swatted them away with ease. His combat instincts were sharper than ever. He warned them they should have let him pass, as his patience had officially run out. He channeled energy into his weapon, preparing to unleash a devastating blow on his enemies. He vaulted into the air, closing the distance to deliver a crushing blow to the demons. Zachary unleashed a brutal slash, completely catching the demon guard by surprise with his speed. The soldier was stunned, barely able to process the sudden, overwhelming force of the attack. Moving like a blur, he cleared a path with a flurry of precise, high-energy movements. He left his enemies behind in the dust, his aura radiating a power they couldn't match. Checking the system, he realized he had less than 20 minutes until the fruit ripened. He decided to conserve his energy, hopping to avoid unnecessary combat until he secured the prize. Crossing through the dark forest, he noticed a strange, eerie silence blanketing the entire valley. The battlefield ahead was a chaotic mess of crackling energy surrounding the glowing legendary tree. He felt the environment being drained, as if the tree were sucking up all the local cosmic energy. Witnessing the fierce struggle, he prepared to intervene before the defenders lost their final battle. A demon guard paused, sensing something was wrong as he gripped his sword in the shadows. His eyes widened, suddenly realizing he wasn't the only creature in the fog-filled forest. Before he could react, a quick slash from the darkness caught him completely off guard. Zachary knew he couldn't hide forever, so he stepped out to face the skirmish. With the fruit near its final stage, he had to reach the center of the conflict. He decided to loop around the western edge of the battlefield to avoid the densest enemy forces. Charging forward with a burst of speed, he cut through the darkness like lightning. The system timer counted down to 10 minutes, signaling that the ultimate reward was near. He wove through the massive combatants, dodging heavy blows. As he neared the tree, he gasped and froze completely, stunned by an unexpected sight. Zachary discovered a force field shield created by the system protecting the legendary tree from the chaos. Realizing this barrier would likely collapse the moment the fruit reached full maturity. With only 6 minutes on the clock, the tension in the valley reached its peak. A high-level demon commander stepped out, locking eyes with the beast guarding the prize. The two powerhouses collided in a blur of motion, shaking the ground beneath them. The demon leader wore a savage grin, clearly savoring the thrill of this brutal match. They exchanged heavy blows, their weapons clashing with enough force to create shockwaves everywhere. The beast roared defiantly, but the demon remained calm, easily seizing the advantage. With a precise slash, the commander forced his opponent to retreat, taking full control of the battle. The guardian staggered, gasping for breath as he desperately tried to maintain his defense against the storm of attacks. The general dominated the battlefield with ease. His blade sliced through the opposition without effort. While Zachary watched the carnage unfold, realizing his attacks were useless against the Guardian's thick hides, he knew he had to intervene immediately if he wanted any hope of claiming the reward. The clock ticked away the final moments. As the tree vibrated with primal energy, the Guardian beast and the general locked eyes. Sensing a sudden shift in the air, a massive surge of magical power erupted, drawing everyone's attention toward the source of the light. Zachary emerged with a cold, calculated smile, ready to wreck the general's plans. He unleashed a focused burst of energy, cutting through the chaos with terrifying speed and focus. The impact sent shockwaves rippling across the valley, throwing the demon forces into complete disarray. Dust and debris blinded the air, leaving the general stunned by the sudden and unexpected ambush. Zachary swept across the chaotic battlefield, desperately scanning for his target through the swirling downpour. A brilliant sword beam suddenly erupted, catching him completely off guard. He reacted on pure instinct, swinging his weapon to deflect the high-speed attack. Recognizing the armor, the opponent identified him as the one who had caused Kevwarn's sudden death. The enemy lunged with lethal intent, forcing Zachary to pivot and dodge by a hair's breadth. Struggling to keep pace, he realized his opponent possessed terrifying speed and overwhelming primal strength. A sharp curve of energy sliced through the air, missing him by a fraction of an inch. The two warriors exchanged blows in a high-stakes dance, testing each other's limits and reflexes, breathless and reeling. Zachary questioned his reckless decision to attack such a formidable foe. The opponent smirked, remarking that now that the enchantment effect had faded, they could finally settle things once and for all. Zachary finally faced his formidable opponent head-on. The three warriors observed one another. Tension spiked as they exchanged intense glares, their eyes burning with primal competitive energy. Ryle mocked Zachary for finally crawling out of the shadows, eager to test his own strength. With only a minute left until the fruit ripened, the race for the treasure officially began. Ryle drew his sword with a smug smile, inviting his opponent to prove his worth. Zachary realized this opponent was far stronger than anyone he had faced in this dungeon. Despite his superior strength stats, he struggled to land even a single blow on Ryle. Frustrated by the stalemate, he decided to shift his focus to the truly greater threat. He shouted to the guardian beast, offering a temporary truce to deal with the intruder. The giant beast roared in disagreement, preparing to unleash a devastating attack on their mutual enemy. Zachary narrowly dodged a crushing punch that shattered the ground beneath his feet. He dove into the high-speed exchange, trading heavy blows with the formidable demon rival. Their weapons clashed with primal force, creating shockwaves that rippled across the entire area. The distance closed rapidly as they continued their relentless dance of steel and magic. The general channeled crackling electricity into his blade, preparing for a terrifying follow-up strike. Zachary realized he was completely overwhelmed in the direct confrontation and needed a new plan. He desperately searched for an opening while the battlefield exploded in blinding purple light. With 34 seconds left on the clock, the tension reached its limit. They were moving into position to snatch the fruit the moment the barrier vanished. That meant he knew exactly where they would be. As the clock ticked down to 23 seconds, the race for the fruit became even more brutal. Zachary watched the general and the guardian clash, waiting for the perfect moment. A massive explosion of energy erupted as the two collided in a blinding clash. Seeing the chaos unfold, he realized this was the golden opportunity he had been waiting for. He gripped his weapon, channeling power as the system clock hit 15 seconds. With no time to waste, he lunged forward to capitalize on the distraction from their fight. His eyes burned with intense focus, fully committed to taking down both targets at once. He dove into the fray, moving with lethal speed toward the center of the conflict. He unleashed a strike. The air crackled with energy as he darted across the battlefield with 10 seconds remaining. The general and the beast froze, suddenly sensing a new, dangerous presence entering their private duel. Zachary attacked with everything he had, closing the remaining gap as the final 7 seconds ticked away. Zachary's sudden explosive attack caught the general completely off guard, shattering his composure instantly. A shockwave tore through the area as the countdown reached 5 seconds. He ignored the chaos and lunged, closing the remaining distance with singular, desperate focus. Leaping over the debris, he pushed his body to the limit with only 2 seconds remaining. Swinging his weapon with a final burst of momentum, he aimed to shatter the protective barrier. The system-generated force field finally shattered into shimmering shards, exposing the reward to the open air. The fruit of ascension ripened at the exact moment, pulsing with a brilliant, otherworldly light. He sliced through the remaining energy tether, separating the treasure from the ancient branch. Reaching out with a steady hand, he snatched the glowing fruit right out of the air, quest complete. He claimed the ultimate reward, while the battlefield remained submerged in stunned silence. Zachary knew the real challenge had only just begun now that the reward was in his hands. And with the entire valley turning its hostile gaze toward him, he had to get out. Zach quickly snatched up the glowing treasure. He had the item, but he knew the hardest part was only just beginning. He plunged straight down from the top of the sacred tree, leaving the brilliant canopy behind. From the cliff, Rydell and the monkey envoy stood waiting, radiating murderous intent. Upon landing, Zach swung his arm and flung a blocking demon aside. But immediately, thousands of eyes across the valley turned toward him at once. He glanced around, telling himself to forget those commanders and focus on escape. The sole objective now was to get out of this damned place as soon as possible. Zach gathered his strength and launched into a wind-tearing dash. He swung his axe in a powerful horizontal arc, shouting for the demons to get out of the way. Demonic soldiers and stone monsters began to close in on him from all sides. Zach clicked his tongue, fully aware this heist would never be that easy. The axe blade in his hand began to flare with powerful sparks of lightning. If they were willing to risk their lives to stop him, he had no qualms about sending them all on their way. Zach panted after clearing a group of soldiers, sweat streaming down his face. Suddenly, he felt an enormous murderous aura closing in from behind. Rydell lunged like a phantom, his sword clashing sparks against Zach's axe haft. A cataclysmic burst of energy detonated at the point of impact. The overwhelming force hurled Zach backward, sending him flying. He slammed hard into the cliff, screaming in pain as the ground beneath him cracked. Zach collapsed to his knees, clutching the axe haft to keep from falling over. Clearly, the plan to grab the goods and run had completely failed. They had set aside their grudges just to join forces and stop him. Zach ground his teeth as he watched Rydell and the monkey envoy steadily approach. A blinding white light flared, heralding an even fiercer clash. The shockwave column from the explosion swept everything away in an instant. Even the demons standing farther off were thrown like rag dolls. A panicked soldier ran forward, shouting his general's name at the top of his lungs. But immediately his comrades grabbed his shoulder, preventing him from running into certain death. Because in battles between such monsters, weaklings like them could do nothing. Zach realized Rydell was getting faster and that he couldn't shake him off at all. He had to push every ounce of strength just to keep up with those lightning-fast sword strikes. Even when he parried, the violet lightning coursed through the axe and numbed his body. Every attempt to flee was blocked by Rydell's ultra-fast closures. He laughed arrogantly, revealing the terrifying power of someone who possessed the sect lord's aura. The bolts surrounding Rydell began shredding Zach's thin armor. Zach's muscles kept spasming from the electric shocks, preventing him from moving as he wished. Seizing the moment, Rydell drove a thrust through Zach, sending him hurtling into the air. Zach collapsed to the ground with a thud, blood from his wound beginning to spill across the cold earth. Rydell looked down with contempt, mocking his stubborn but useless bravery. He slowly bent down, reaching to retrieve the treasure pouch from the dying Zach. At that moment, the monkey envoy suddenly leapt down from above, attacking Rydell to contest the prey. The monkey envoy roared, its arm glowing like molten lava, ready to crush anything. Rydell showed visible annoyance, muttering curses about Ogres's incompetence that had caused this unnecessary trouble. The red ape breathed out waves of scorching air, but Rydell barely even regarded these beasts. He grunted that if not for his grandfather, the useless Ogres would have been dragged out dead long ago. Without further words, Rydell swung his sword and cleaved the monkey envoy in two instantly. With a clean stroke, the red monster collapsed, leaving everyone stunned. Zach suddenly received a flurry of level-up notifications as he witnessed the creature's death. He rose to his feet, his gaze coldly fixed on Rydell. Now the true opponent had revealed himself. Rydell sneered with pride. To him, those petty envoys meant nothing compared to his real power. He lunged like a purple bolt, while Zach tightened his grip on the axe, ready to meet him. A fiery clash erupted, both pouring all their strength into this decisive strike. In that life-or-death instant, Zach began to perceive the gravity down more deeply. He combined it with the chop technique he had practiced to mastery for so long. The two distinct sources of power began to fuse, creating an entirely new force. Zack's axe blade blazed, overwhelming Rydell's purple lightning in the direct confrontation. He let out a thunderous roar, channeling every last ounce of life into an earth-shattering cleave. Rydell was genuinely shocked. He could not believe someone from this nascent world could wield such formidable power. A colossal column of light erupted, engulfing the area in extreme pure energy. Rydell staggered out of the wreckage, his white armor cracked open, blood streaming down his enraged face. Furious, he summoned a rain of purple swords that darkened the sky, making Zack blanch as he realized the situation had worsened. Tens of thousands of energy blades descended like a storm, leaving the target no gap to hide. Zack tried to fight back, but the devastation of the technique was far beyond his strength. Consecutive explosions plowed through the ground, pushing Zack to the brink. Thick smoke obscured vision, leaving only the frenzied purple lightning sweeping every corner. Zack knelt amid the rubble, battered all over, blood dripping drop by drop onto his chipped axe. Rydell loomed closer, the sword in his hand still radiating extreme killing intent. Zack tried to command his body to move, but it seemed his strength had been completely drained. Rydell raised his sword high, preparing to deliver the final blow to end the thief's life. Zack stared in shock as the blade halted inches before his face when the surrounding space suddenly froze strangely. Rydell panicked, sensing something dark piercing through his body from behind. A jet-black blade pierced Rydell's chest. "Goodbye, cousin," a voice rang out, thick with mockery. Rydell spat blood, roaring the traitor's name in utter hatred. Ogras. Ogras revealed himself with a sinister grin and eyes glowing in the dark, ending the chapter with a stunning twist. Suddenly, Ogras appeared from nowhere and drove a dagger into Rydell's back. "Hello, cousin." Rydell had no time to react, his face frozen as he watched the blade pierce his chest. Ogras bared his teeth in a triumphant grin, looking every bit the cunning traitor. Rydell's bodyguard collapsed with a thud, dying on the spot. Zack stood stunned like, what just happened? The demon soldiers below were equally shocked, beginning to panic. Cursing echoed across the valley. They couldn't believe Ogras had the nerve to do that. An enraged commander swung his sword and shouted, "Traitor." The whole army began to seethe, ready to surge forward and tear apart the one who had killed their general. Zack was still in shock, staring at the sneering old demon Ogras. Avenged General Rydell, the demon soldiers charged wildly. Ignoring the raging crowd, Ogras reached in and pulled out a strange object. He casually popped a pill into his mouth, his actions utterly mysterious. Zack looked at the mass of soldiers rushing in, wondering whether the old man was really saving him or had another scheme. Ogras swallowed with a hiccup, his face betraying no emotion. Zack stepped back into a defensive stance, unwilling to let his guard down against someone who had just stabbed his kin. No sooner had he swallowed than Ogras vomited a mouthful of thick black blood. He staggered and collapsed. The recent stab had clearly taken a lot out of him. The system notified Zack had killed 4 emissaries and 1 general. Mission complete. 5-5. The words mission complete flashed prominently before his eyes. Zack wondered why Ogras would sabotage his faction's invasion. What could he possibly gain? The portal should have closed only after the general and the emissaries were dead. Zack glanced at the ring of hundreds of demons. The situation was still extremely tense. He knew he had only a few seconds before they recovered and tore him apart. Lying flat, Ogras suddenly twitched. "What now?" Zack spun around, gripping his axe tightly. Ogras coughed and muttered, complaining that feeling wounded wasn't pleasant. Zack was ready to finish him off to settle the debt. He didn't want to take any more risks. Ogras raised a hand to signal him to stop, pretending he meant no harm. He grinned and told Zack that now they were on the same side. Zack narrowed his eyes and asked directly why he shouldn't just chop off his head right now. Ogras told Zack to throw the cauldron of the little demons into the fire if he wanted to stay alive. Zack glanced at the demon army closing in, still half doubting the old man's words. "Trust me, if you don't do it, we'll both end up on a platter in a moment." Zack gritted his teeth, cursing inwardly because he knew the old demon was right. Surrounded so tightly, even if he sprouted wings, he couldn't escape. Zack pulled out the cauldron and gathered his remaining strength to prepare the throw. With a precise throw, the cauldron flew straight into the blazing purple fire at the center. Crash! The cauldron shattered, releasing a bubbling greenish liquid inside. Instantly, a toxic plume erupted, spreading through the valley like a whirlwind. "Quaco poison!" The demon soldiers screamed in agony and collapsed like cut stalks. The poisonous smoke enveloped everything. Zack turned to Ogras and asked, "Now what?" Ogras calmly popped a green antidote pill into his mouth. Before vanishing, he sneeringly wished Zack luck. No sooner had he finished speaking than he vanished in an instant, leaving Zack amid the choking smoke. "Bastard!" Zack cursed inwardly. The old demon had played him cruelly at the worst possible moment. A strong mountain wind whipped the toxic cloud, quickly covering the entire valley. Zack knew trusting the old demon had been a deadly mistake. Explosions and chaos rang everywhere. Zack held his breath and tried to sprint away as fast as he could to escape the death zone. "Don't breathe, absolutely don't breathe," he told himself and kept running headlong for his life. But reality wasn't kind. His open wounds let the toxin seep into him faster than expected. The poison began to soak directly into his blood. Ghastly bluish veins appeared along his arms. The sight inside his veins was horrifying as the toxin attacked his cells, Zack silently cursed Ogres again. He headed straight for the mountain, hopping the smoke would thin at higher altitude. Zack's body was overloaded, the bluish veins spread across him, bringing suffocating pain. He began to stagger, his lungs burned as if seared red hot from severe oxygen deprivation. Zack couldn't hold it and inhaled, but it was all poisonous smoke. He swooned from the pain. The potency of this toxin surpassed anything he'd faced before. It was an entirely different level of destruction. In the midst of despair, Zack spotted a pool shimmering with a blue-green glow directly ahead. He risked everything and dove into the water, trying to dive deep to find a fragile lifeline. The pool brimmed with cosmic energy. Zack hoped it would lead to some seed of crystal within the mountain. But no sooner had he dived than a powerful current of electricity ran through his body, leaving him stunned. It's scorching, like being burned alive. Zack thrashed wildly in unbearable pain beneath the surface. The water's energy was too concentrated. It was torturing his body even worse than the poison had. With no other choice, Zack produced the mysterious fruit. This was his last gamble to stay alive. He mustered all his strength and bit off a large chunk, hoping this treasure would work a miracle. Delicious, a strange cooling sensation spread, temporarily dulling Zack's bodily pain. It's working, maybe I'll live. He silently thanked the heavens for a sliver of hope. But the joy was short-lived. Zack's eyes flashed with an odd light. The scorching sensation returned to torment him. Not good, something's wrong. The fruit healed his wounds, but also triggered a new energetic shock. Zack's body was torn between extremes of heat and cold, spinning uncontrollably in the stream of energy. The sensation was worse than being stabbed or struck by lightning many times over. Please, stop. Zack gradually lost feeling in his hands, then his chest. All consciousness began to fade with each beat of his heart. He felt nothing anymore, sinking deeper to the bottom of the dark pool, surrounded by sparkling bubbles of energy. In the limestone cave, the drip of water fell into the deep blue pool. Zack surfaced, gasping for breath after surviving the deadly battle. He struggled onto the rocky shore, coughing to expel water from his lungs. Water splashed as Zack collapsed, his body still trembling from exhaustion. He lay sprawled on the cold stone floor, muttering as he checked his status panel. A blue screen appeared before Zack the moment he finished speaking. He had reached level 36 and officially become an E-rank human with strength exceeding 175 points. Zack clicked the New Titles tab to view the rewards for stopping the invasion. 2 premium titles, One Against Many and Planet Shield, granted a bundle of bonus stats. He forced himself to sit up. Though his body still ached, his mood had improved considerably. Zack exhaled and leaned his back against the rock to rest for a moment. He wondered how many demons had survived, especially the cunning Ogres who was surely somewhere on the island. Zack switched to the quest menu to see what he had completed. The task to kill the general was done, but the invasion master objective was counting down 43 days. Something was off. His lone walker skill hadn't advanced a single kilometer despite running a long distance. Zack looked down at his feet and decided to take off his old boots. His bare feet were now in direct contact with the ground, exactly as the skill required. He felt much more comfortable. Zack's soles had toughened to the point that walking on glass wouldn't hurt. Time to move on, Zack said as he stood and slung his battle axe over his shoulder. He didn't forget to take some water from the energy pool as a precaution for the journey ahead. Zack walked along the rails in the mine. His footsteps echoed in the silent space. He had steeled himself to confront demons, but the mine was eerily empty. The ore cart sat abandoned. There was no sign of overseers or soldiers. Zack moved toward the cave entrance where daylight streamed in. He smiled slightly when he noticed the giant red beam had completely vanished. However, Zack's work wasn't over. The invaders' fortress still stood in the distance. From afar, the fortress looked extremely sturdy, its high walls towering skyward. Zack hid behind a large rock, watching every movement of the demon base. He sensed something was wrong. Last time the walls had been swarming with guards, but now they were empty. Even the tallest watchtowers had not a single soul on them. Yet smoke still rose from within, indicating people were living there. Zack quickly crossed the open ground and crept up to the base of the wall. He gripped the stone ledge and climbed up with astonishing speed. Zack crouched atop the wall, surveying the residential area inside the fortress. Could their entire army have been wiped out in the valley battle? He wondered. Below were not fierce warriors but demon civilians who looked confused and lost. Zack spotted a female demon clerk slowly walking along the stone road between the buildings. He lightly jumped down, landing directly behind her without making a sound. A huge hand suddenly clamped over the female demon's mouth, preventing her from screaming for help. Zack dragged the secretary roughly into the darkness of a narrow alley to begin the interrogation. He snarled a threat, ordering her to stay silent or she'd die instantly. The female demon secretary trembled with fear, only able to stammer and nod under Zack's pressure. Zack reassured her that he only needed a few answers and would let her go if she cooperated. He wondered why demons remained on the island despite the invasion's failure. The trembling secretary explained that some simply could not return home. She said the defeat was a family disgrace. Returning would mean terrible punishments, so they chose to stay on Earth. Zack was surprised to learn his island had become a refuge for demons and asked how many like her remained. The secretary admitted she didn't know the exact number because she handled paperwork, but she insisted Agras, the real general, would know. Zack immediately objected. He had seen the general cut down right before his eyes. The secretary frantically swore that Agras was still alive, grinning with bared teeth, which left Zack bewildered. Zack described the man he'd killed. White hair, silver armor, wielding a lightning sword that flew through the air. That was Rydell, the secretary corrected. He was only the deputy commander. Zack froze for a moment. If Rydell wasn't the general, then why had he been leading that army? Things began to clear up. Zack suspected Agras had secretly helped poison his own army to carry out a personal scheme. He pressed to know where that sly Agras was now. The secretary said that after interrogating some people in the palace, he had immediately left, heading south. Zack's face hardened when he heard south, for that was where his outpost was located. He turned to leave, making the woman breathe a sigh of relief, but Zack halted and asked her name. Zacharith, friends call me Zack, the secretary answered honestly without suspicion. Zack smiled wryly when he heard her name matched his own. He raised his staff high and delivered a sarcastic welcome to the refugee demon. With a sickening thud, Zack knocked the secretary out so she couldn't alert anyone else. Zacharith collapsed beside some wooden crates while Zack trudged away, his mind a jumble over the refugee demons and the missing general. He leapt up and, using superhuman strength, jumped over the fortress's towering wall. Standing atop the wall, Zack looked toward the deep forest and realized the trouble wasn't over as a new quest began its countdown. He smirked slightly. It was time to head home and welcome the uninvited guest Agras. Zack muttered that he would return home. He didn't want to keep Agras waiting too long. He took off his shoes and began walking barefoot on the ground to feel the Tao. Meanwhile, Agras had somehow arrived at Zack's base and strolled about as if it were his own home. He eyed the dilapidated trailer, wondering if this was truly the lair of the one who had ruined the Azrazak clan's plans. Agras nudged the half-cooked meat by the fire with his toe, clicking his tongue and saying the place looked no different from an animal's den. He picked up a blood-stained bandage from the ground to examine it, further convinced the owner here was a mad beast. The demon deputy commander stepped into the trailer, his face betraying contempt at the squalid scene. But when he saw the Nexus node, he had to admit these natives at least knew enough to buy one. Agras reached out to touch the crystal, thinking that since he had failed the system would probably prevent its use. Sure enough, a spark of electricity popped out and pushed his hand back. Agras cursed in annoyance. His eyes suddenly went dark. He realized he and his comrades were completely isolated, unable to link this town to their system anymore. Even so, Agras calculated gathering the remaining demons to build a new sphere of influence, whether the system recognized it or not. Suddenly, he sensed a murderous aura and spun around on alert. From the mist, Zack strolled forward, his battle axe slung over his shoulder, dry twigs crunching under his feet. Startled, Agras summoned his weapon, unable to believe this monster had survived and returned. Seeing Zack barefoot, Agras thought to himself that the man truly was insane. He worried worst case that Zack might already have swallowed the spirit fruit, would spell big trouble. Agras gritted his teeth and stood before the Nexus node, his eyes filled with killing intent as he stared at Zack. Then he sighed, withdrew the dark aura, and muttered a pissed-off curse. Zack was hiding in the bushes watching. The illusion array was still there, but something felt very wrong. He took a sip of water, telling himself to be ready for whatever awaited on the other side. With that, Zack launched out of the brush at extreme speed. At the sight of him, Agras sneered that the natives were savages, only capable of aggression and violence. But instead of attacking, he leisurely sat at the summoned tea table piled with pastries and politely invited Zack to sit. Zack stared at the deputy commander, full of suspicion. Agras asked if his subordinates were still alive. Zack replied briefly that they were, then asked how he had found this place. He scoffed that the F-rank illusion array was obvious even to mediocre skill, and his underlings had discovered this place long ago. He glanced at the battered trailer and mocked how humans could live in such a cramped, filthy tin box. He reiterated that he'd found Zack in the mine before either side could capitalize on knowledge of the place. Zack remained where he was, demanding a satisfactory explanation for why the demon and his forces were still clinging to the island. Agras calmly said he had come to meet Zack. The invasion failed, so there was no need for them to remain enemies. Zack thought to himself the demon probably assumed he had an entire faction behind him and planned to propose an alliance. He intended to use that to probe him. He reminded the demon that the world had been integrated for less than 2 months, and Agras needed an excellent reason not to have him continue hunting the demon clan. Agras began to tell how the teleport gate had closed. After Zack completed the mission, they only had 12 hours to return. He recalled those who couldn't return in time and those who chose to stay when the gate slammed shut. They accepted severing all ties with their tribe and homeland to find a new way to live, never to return. The deputy commander asserted that even if they wanted to return now, they couldn't, because the ruthless celestial path had locked the way. Zack wondered what the name Ruthless Celestial Path meant, and why Agrez seemed so nonchalant despite so many of his kin having died. Agrez replied that it was the system Zack had been seeing. To him, life and death across the multiverse were utterly commonplace. He revealed a brutal past in which his brothers and sisters had long been slaughtered by members of their own tribe. Speaking of motives, the demon did not hesitate to mention the boundless greed of the demon leadership. It was simply about resources. New worlds like Earth are treasure troves for powers to plunder, and his tribe was unlucky to run into a monster in human guise like Zack. Zack frowned and asked why the system hadn't punished Agrez for his failure. According to the seer, the punishment should have been terrible. Agrez sneered, saying the seer had deceived Zack. He claimed the so-called Ruthless Celestial Path actually had a very bizarre sense of humor. He explained further that the system doesn't punish failures, it simply loses interest and abandons them. Sometimes that's worse than death. With a cold smile, Agrez welcomed Zack to the multiverse, where the naive get torn apart and only the calculating survive. Zack continued asking about the invasion. Were all those flooding into Earth demons like Agrez? Agrez shook his head, insisting that couldn't be. That's precisely why they needed each other. If Zack thought his tribe was the worst, he was gravely mistaken. Agrez proudly boasted his side had manpower and knowledge, while Zack had the system's protection here, a mutually beneficial exchange. He revealed that the system always limits the power of foreign entities in nascent worlds like Earth. Zack suggested Agrez stay on the island, but Agrez knew it wasn't that simple. Agrez emphasized that only by becoming a true lord could Zack build a city recognized and protected by the system, something Agrez couldn't do because of his status. Zack hesitated slightly since he hadn't completed the mission to become a lord. Agrez reassured him it would come soon, and then he could buy defensive structures from the system. He painted a scenario where, if attacked, Zack need only spend a few million Nexus coins to blast enemies away with advanced defensive installations. Agrez began probing, asking Zack to share his task board so he could advise what Zack needed to do to officially become a lord. Zack immediately refused. He affirmed his name was Zack, not human, as the demon disparagingly called him, and he wouldn't share his secrets. Agrez laughed and said Zack was misunderstanding. Sharing meant only showing him the mission content displayed on the system screen. Agrez wouldn't steal his rewards. He wore a crafty expression, asserting that Zack and his comrades surely shared information like this with each other before. He was playing on Zack's suspicions. Zack clicked his tongue and agreed, though inwardly worried Agrez would realize he was actually alone. Reluctantly, he showed his task board. The unique D-rank task board titled Incursion Master appeared. Agrez skimmed it and nodded, judging it to be a mission against waves of monsters. Based on the keyword denizens, Agrez analyzed that the system would send beasts rather than intelligent foes. He said this was one of the most troublesome mission types the system could assign a lord. Agrez predicted the attack waves would begin as soon as the countdown ended, averaging one wave per month lasting 3 months. Zack realized he had only a month and a half to bolster himself and the town. He then asked Agrez how many crystals the demon army had mined, demanding they contribute if they wanted to cooperate. Agrez looked around innocently, saying those crystals had probably left with those who returned to the teleport gate. The two fell into a suspicious silence. Agrez curled a lip and suggested that maybe the demons hadn't managed to take them all, and Zack could certainly find them on the island. He even proposed that the first thing Zack should do was buy a smelter to refine the raw crystals into higher grade ones. Zack raised an eyebrow at the word "we" that Agrez had used. He still hadn't fully accepted the demon as an ally. Agrez insisted that after this conversation Zack would see how useful he was. He sneered, asking if Zack intended to mine the whole resource mountain by himself. Zack bluntly reminded him that Agrez had killed Rydell and helped poison half of his army, a blatant betrayal. Agrez signaled Zack to keep quiet about it so he could maintain the trust of the remaining demons. Zack agreed to stay silent and asked if he had any other useful information. Agrez's expression suddenly grew serious. He leaned in and dropped a line that stunned Zack. "Do you know your poison?" Agrez tossed out the question casually. "You do know your poison, right?" Zack jerked back, eyes wide, snapping, "What?" He slammed his axe onto the table and barked for the demon to make himself clear. Agrez waved him down to calm, then pointed at the cosmic water Zack had just gulped. Zack gritted his teeth, suspicious that the demon had secretly poisoned the pond out back. But no, Agrez explained it was a natural toxin. Drinking that raw water was like swallowing liquid lead. It would burn the energy conduits from within. The demon added that although it restored energy quickly, it could send someone to their grave in an instant. Zack still didn't fully believe him, since his body seemed to be functioning normally. Agras sighed and told him to try regenerating energy without medicine to see what happened. Zack fell silent and focused, testing himself immediately. His face drained. The once abundant energy stream was now a mere trickle, like a clogged faucet. Zack began to sweat profusely and asked how to cure it. Agras said there was an antidote, but it was extremely rare. Hardly anyone was foolish enough to drink that and live more than a day. The demon warned that if he kept forcing energy into the damaged conduits, he'd die from permanent energy exhaustion. Zack gritted his teeth. Facing the incoming monsters without usable energy would be a disaster. Agras suggested Zack stay in energy-rich areas to let his body heal naturally, though he admitted he didn't know how long it would take. Zack rested his chin on his hand, thinking the situation was turning worse than expected. Agras suddenly leaned back with a short sigh, muttering envy for those first-generation pioneers. He pointed at Zack and mocked the privileges the system granted to newly integrated planets like Earth. Zack stared at the demon, rambling about how lucky he was despite doing nothing but foolish things. Agras continued to complain that the system's favoritism made ordinary cultivators like him want to die of jealousy. He changed tone and curiously asked about the huge rewards Zack received after repelling the invasion. Zack squinted at him, wondering whether he should reveal anything to this crafty creature. He told himself Agras was surely trying to curry favor to find an opportunity to loot or kill him. But better to keep him in plain sight to watch than let him lurk secretly. Zack stepped toward the trailer. Zack decided to open the notification board to see exactly what he had received. System summary: the invasion was completely repelled. With 88% contribution, Zack achieved rank A and rewards began to drop. 2 treasure chests appeared, glittering with 10 E-rank Nexus crystals and a brand new equipment set. It was a cloak and trousers inscribed with patched runes, self-cleaning and capable of negating impact force, very high quality. Zack grinned smugly as he held the outfit. Now he truly had new clothes. After changing in the vehicle for a while, he stepped out with a completely new look, far less like a wild man. Agras applauded, praising that the outfit made Zack look a bit more civilized. The demon sneered that with this appearance, his subordinates would probably be less afraid to work with him. Just as Zack was about to speak about cooperation, the ground suddenly shook violently. The table was thrown up. A sudden earthquake turned everything upside down. The two shouted at each other, asking who had done this. Both were bewildered, not understanding what was happening. From offshore, the sea began to churn with massive, violent waves. Zack and Agras ran to the cliff edge, stunned as something gigantic rose from the depths of the sea. Blocks of stone and metal structures shone as they thrust upward amid the foaming waves. A grand mechanical edifice with a futuristic air emerged proudly. System notification: awarded Ilix Shipyard medium scale E-rank, an unbelievable reward. Zack froze, scratching his head at the unimaginable grandeur of it. Contrasting Zack's stupefaction, Agras went mad, grabbing his arm and screaming whether it could be upgraded. They're rich. Still ecstatic, Agras urged Zack to check the town menu and immediately share the info with him. Zack opened the system board. The line Ilix Shipyard medium scale E-rank appeared with status upgradable. He was still a bit dazed. Agras clutched his head and screamed. He couldn't believe this human's luck. The creator's shipyard, this will change the whole game. Zack scratched the back of his neck, wondering why the demon was overreacting. Couldn't he just build a normal shipyard himself? Agras was speechless, calling Zack thick-headed. He explained Ilix are the living golems, the greatest builders in the multiverse. This race specializes in creating flying fortresses and spacecraft coveted by all powers. Owning a shipyard run by them was unheard of. Zack naively asked, spaceships, like starships? Agras corrected him. These are vessels that can traverse myriad miles across the multiverse. He dashed Zack's hopes immediately. This E-rank yard couldn't build starships yet, you'd have to upgrade it first. Agras warned the most important thing now was absolute secrecy. If word leaked, every faction on the planet would come to seize it. Zack asked how to upgrade it, but Agras shrugged, telling him to go inside and ask those creators directly. Zack decided to proceed to explore alone. Agras meant to follow, but was stopped by Zack at the parking area. Ordered to stay outside, the demon visibly wilted, his face falling in disappointment. He looked genuinely pitiful. The massive shipyard sat against the cliff, inside echoing the constant ring of hammers and clashing metal. Zack walked along the wide metal corridor, overwhelmed by the industrial scale within the structure. He tiptoed into the main hall and called out a greeting to see if anyone was there. The interior was immaculately clean and modern. A tall metallic entity with a blue-silver shell and an orange cloak turned around. It was Rom, the liaison of shipyard number 65238. Rom bowed politely, assuring he would address all of Lord Atwood's questions fairly and promptly. Suddenly, a pair of sickle-shaped robotic legs appeared. A free-spirited voice rang out, telling Zack to ignore that stiff robot. Zack froze when he saw a bizarre creature with a kaleidoscopic, illusory face staring at him. It didn't look very friendly. It was the Ilex foreman. He boasted that his body took 300 years to build and bluntly called Zack's island a pathetic little hovel. Old foreman Carunthal flaunted his newly sharpened spider-like legs, proudly claiming it took 300 years and a pile of stolen C-rank nebulous coins to make this body. He sneered that it was probably because he caused too much trouble that he got demoted to this godforsaken place. Carunthal eagerly asked Zack what he wanted built, suggesting massive options like battery ships or space bombs to blow nearby islands away for fun. Zack was dumbstruck, not knowing how to respond to the blacksmith's violent proposals. Rom, standing beside him, immediately reminded him that those D-rank warships weren't part of the creator's agreement, asking Carunthal if he'd not read the approved designs. Rom introduced Carunthal as a top specialist here but said he was reassigned after some experimental accidents. Carunthal waved it off as minor and promised he wouldn't blow up any continents on this nascent world. Zack cut in, explaining his main goal wasn't shipbuilding but to disguise this Ilex yard to look like a normal shipyard. Carunthal laughed uproariously, calling Zack cowardly. He said the most effective method was to carpet bomb anyone who dared snoop around his stuff. Zack was speechless, sweat dripping down his face at the constructive advice from the mechanic. The blacksmith changed tone, saying he could hide those signatures, but making everything look ugly and ordinary would cost a lot. Zack cautiously asked the price, no doubt calculating how much money was about to disappear. Just as Carunthal was about to shout 8 million, Rom cut in and fixed the price at 525,000 su. The smith muttered curses at the meddlesome construct. Though it hurt his pocket terribly, Zack swallowed and accepted the exorbitant payment for safety's sake. Upon confirmation, the system reported it would take 4 hours to complete. Carunthal began operating the machinery, and a hazy holographic silhouette replaced his mechanical exterior. Zack gaped at Carunthal's new projection, now a tall, silver-haired man in a neat suit. The camouflage mode was more magical than he expected. Carunthal in his new form paced back and forth, clicking his tongue at how dull this bipedal look was, but said it would do for now. He told Zack to call him if he wanted anything explosive, since he didn't plan to keep this two-legged farce for long. With that, he turned and went deeper into the shipyard. Zack hurriedly called after him to ask one more important question before he vanished. He asked if the man could build something to fend off an entire horde of monsters. Carunthal's eyes flickered briefly and then dimmed. The old man sighed that he'd love to, but as Rom said, they're restricted to maritime work. He advised Zack to buy some defensive formation arrays from the shop instead. The spider legs clattered on the stone floor again as Carunthal disappeared beyond the great door. Outside, machinery roared and Ilex workers hurriedly worked to alter the base's appearance under Zack's observation. Zack looked around and saw dozens of builders disguised as ordinary people hauling stones and repainting the shipyard's rugged walls. After finishing at the shipyard, he strolled along the forest trail back to the main camp. Back at camp, Zack flopped onto a chair and scrolled through the system board. To afford the defensive gear Carunthal suggested, he decided to follow Ograz's advice and invest in a crystal refining furnace. The machine worked quite simply: dump raw crystals into one end and it filters and spits out high-grade sparkling crystals at the other. Zack pressed the purchase confirmation, hoping this would be the goose that lays golden eggs to recoup his recent expenses. With the equipment ready, he lacked only one thing: customers willing to spend on these refined crystals. At the same time, far away in the multiverse, the Thayer Trade Consortium's enormous flagship drifted alone through deep space. Inside the ship, a blue-skinned man stood before an ancestral portrait. His merchant family had endured 20,000 years of history, but he bitterly realized that everything was about to end in his lifetime. The once glorious house had become an empty name. He looked at the family motto board reading, "Ambition is fuel, honor is the compass." He sneered that descendants only remembered the first half while the compass had long been abandoned. Leader Thayer slammed his fist on the table, furious that scandals and betrayals by kin had squeezed the house from all sides by the Tsarun clan. He raked his hair amid towering stacks of debt ledgers. Even another 100 years wouldn't save them, and worse, he didn't have a single day to spare. He stared at the branch network map flashing red warnings. Once the last branch fell, the system would revoke their multiversal merchant license. Death loomed. Without the trade system's protection, the Tsarun would not hesitate to slaughter his people. He paced the vast room in despair, having tried everything from cutting fees to bribing lords, yet no one paid attention to the collapsing consortium. He forced a laugh, finding it absurd that a venerable trade house was now being shunned like a contagion. He swept papers into the air. The rotten reputation and sabotage by the old Sauron patriarch left him unable to pay anyone to take on more branches. Only 3 days remained before the last branch was erased, and he would have no choice but to flee for his life. Leader Thayer stood motionless amid the scattered documents, breathing heavily and exhausted. He admitted he lacked his ancestors' business instinct, but in this razor-edge situation, he stared at the portrait one last time, his gaze hardening. He still had one final move and would bet everything on it: seek out a nascent world. Zack furiously poured raw crystals into the furnace's hopper, sweating after a long day of work. Smoke billowed from the machine's exhausts as the machinery roared through the night. The refined crystals dropped into the tray, sparkling like diamonds and looking far superior to the raw stones. Suddenly a ting sounded. Zack froze as the system's blue notification panel appeared before him. The notice stated that the Thayer Trade Consortium's headquarters was being listed for sale as a shop. Zack gaped, not understanding what the hell was happening. In the quiet forest, Zack's hut and vehicle were still lit, insects churring and breaking the silence. Agras peered at the holographic notification, stroking his chin thoughtfully. He was starting to take an interest in the event. Zack wondered he couldn't find any good reason why a trade consortium would want to move its headquarters to such a remote, danger-filled place. Agras explained there was no need to worry about robberies or aggression, because the celestial trade system had extremely strict rules to protect both buyers and sellers. Zack began to feel excited. He realized this could be a big opportunity to expand resources without too much effort. Agras analyzed further, asserting they were indeed merchants, but this move showed they were fleeing something utterly terrifying. The demon said that nascent worlds like Earth were perfect hiding places because they were nearly invisible on the multiverse map, ideal for refugees seeking shelter. Zack glanced at his companion and teased that, in a way, they weren't so different from Agras now. Both were wanderers. Agras feigned a coughing fit to deflect, then added that a refugee trade consortium would surely have meager, scarce goods. Still hesitant, Zack folded his arms, stared at the crystal refiner, and asked Agras what he should do next. "Do I have to ask?" "Seize that headquarters, of course," Agras shouted excitedly, his face dead serious. Agras's smile grew sly. He knew full well that people backed into a corner were weak and easy to lowball in negotiations. Because in this backwater, Zack was the only customer capable of supporting that refugee consortium. Agras laughed heartily and clenched his fist in triumph. He'd already planned how to squeeze the merchants dry if they didn't follow his arrangements. Zack walked along the forest path, thinking Agras said he'd be nearby, but seeing no one, he wondered where the demon was. He paused, suspicion on his face. The demon should have shown up by now. Suddenly Zack heard whispering ahead. He froze, eyes sharp and highly alert. Zack gripped his axe, ready to fight. He thought to himself that Agras might not be alone. Could this be an ambush? In the distance, Agras led a group forward, waving them on to hurry up or they'd be late. From a high branch, Zack saw Agras's companions complaining in exhaustion. The demon ignored them and ordered them to speed up. Thinking he'd been tricked, Zack didn't hesitate. He leapt down and swung his axe hard at Agras. Taken by surprise, the demon's eyes widened in shock, his mouth stammering, unable to form words. A loud bang rang out as Zack's axe struck Agras's block, sending off jets of black electric sparks. Agras was flung backwards a long distance. He panted and yelled at Zack, demanding to know why he'd attacked out of the blue. Zack kept his murderous glare and replied that the rule was to strike first rather than be ambushed. Agras pointed behind him, asking Zack if he planned to ambush a group of civilians like that. Only then did Zack regain his composure and see a group of demons of all ages trembling with fear. Zack went blank as he realized he had nearly massacred an entire group of refugees. A small demon girl with glasses pressed behind an adult and peeked at Zack with terrified eyes. Zack lowered his weapon, awkwardly asking why Agras had brought these people. The demon explained that to build a proper city, you couldn't rely on just 2 warriors. Agras continued his pitch. If they kept placing things wherever they pleased, the infrastructure would fail. They needed these people to turn the place into a future capital. Zack scratched his head and smiled sheepishly, apologizing that he thought Agras had brought troops to eliminate him. He turned to the crowd, forced a friendly smile, and introduced himself as Zack. Contrary to Zack's enthusiasm, the demon refugees remained silent, eyeing him with deep suspicion. Seeing the awkward atmosphere, Agras clapped his hands and scolded everyone to stop standing around like country bumpkins and get to work. The demon ordered his subordinates to set up a worktable right there in the jungle. A large leather map was unfurled. Agras announced he had the necessary planning schematics ready. In no time, a red canvas field tent was erected to serve as the command meeting room. Everyone gathered around the map. Agras asked Zack if he'd chosen a name for the future town yet. Zack thought for a moment, then offered the name Port Atwood, causing the demon group to pause for a beat to confirm. Agras ordered everyone to begin detailed planning. The goal was to turn the place into a stronghold within 40 days. The discussion was highly professional as experts began pointing at the map to talk about drainage systems and the commercial quarter. Watching everyone work enthusiastically, Zack felt lucky to let Agras handle it. If he had to build a city himself, he'd be doomed. Under the plan, the town would be divided into 4 districts. The inner core would be walled and belong solely to Zack. The other demon clan's existence needed to be kept secret to avoid unnecessary trouble. The map detailed the remaining outer districts, including an area reserved for trade and artisans. The next district was the military zone, which would house the training barracks for Port Atwood's future army. And the final district at the edge would be the residential area where everyone would live. Zack pointed to an empty spot on the map and asked what that area was for. The bespectacled demoness stepped forward and explained that was where the academy would be built. Zack couldn't help but be surprised. She emphasized that a society that doesn't prepare its youth will soon wither and be forgotten, so the academy was the most important structure. Zack asked curiously about the enrollment age and the specific knowledge she intended to teach them. Agras lounged back watching the exchange. The demoness explained that while formal training began at 16, the academy would prepare them years in advance. The curriculum would cover everything from combat skills and cosmic energy control to equipment crafting. Zack suddenly realized why the demons he'd met all had nearly identical classes, from weapons to lightning abilities. The demoness confirmed and called it heritage, a foundation of power passed down through generations. Agras explained that the paths to power were secrets carefully guarded. Most houses owned only a few paths and built their foundations on them. He gave an example of the path from Lightning Warrior evolving into Storm Warrior and then into Tempest Swordsman. That was the path Rydell had taken. Zack wondered what role cultivation played in all this. The bespectacled demon explained that cultivation speeds up level advancement. At high tiers, gaining a level could take years. She added that it also enabled racial evolution because without racial level-ups one couldn't advance to higher classes. Zack asked if an ordinary person could become a cultivator. Agras smiled mysteriously and replied that there were treasures capable of making that happen. He began telling a story about an ancient overlord who waged war against a ruling house on a B-tier planet to seize a relic for his pet. Zack listened intently and asked what happened afterward. Agras continued. The overlord annihilated that entire planet, seized the relic, and transformed his pet into an intelligent divine beast. When Agras paused, Zack asked, "Is that it?" A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead at the story's brutality. Agras's eyes glittered. He sneered that the story wasn't over yet. After becoming a divine beast, it transformed into a stunningly beautiful woman, and the overlord fell deeply in love with her. But ironically, the divine beast did not return his affection. With a haunting expression, Agras finished the tale. In the end, the mighty overlord was killed by his own pet. Agras clapped loudly to break the somber mood, saying that was enough of the story and now Zack should buy that merchant. The two looked toward the wide open clearing, where a major event was about to take place. Agras urged him to hurry and buy. Zack had steeled himself for this major investment. The system interface appeared asking Zack if he wanted to purchase Thayer Corporation's headquarters. He reached out and pressed yes. Immediately, a brilliant green pillar of light descended from the sky with a thunderous roar. The ground trembled violently and dust billowed as a massive structure began to materialize. When the light dissipated, an old Victorian mansion stood in the ancient forest, looking a bit dilapidated and cracked. Agras surveyed the building and launched into harsh criticism. He told Zack they might have just recruited the worst merchants in the multiverse. It looked like a filthy slum. They cautiously approached the decrepit building. Suddenly, the wooden door creaked dryly as it slowly opened. A pair of polished leather-shod feet stepped out from the mansion's shadows. A voice warmly welcomed the honored guests. Calvin Thayer, chairman of Thayer Corporation, appeared with green skin and a radiant smile. He glanced around anxiously and asked who the esteemed lord was here. Zack and Agras halted before a large wooden manor that looked somewhat shabby, its windows shattered. The door opened and a green-skinned dwarf stepped out to greet them warmly, calling them honored guests. He introduced himself as Calvin Thayer, chairman of Thayer Corporation, then glanced around to ask who the true esteemed lord was. But as the conversation began, Calvin slammed the table and shouted that the customer's proposal was absurd. Agras lounged casually and coldly warned the green-skinned dwarf to stop playing the poor act, or he'd take everything for real, not as a joke. Calvin clutched his chest theatrically, insisting he wasn't acting and calling Agras's words nonsense. To bolster his case, he pulled two frightened children closer. Calvin sniffled, complaining that his children hadn't eaten all week. Look at them, did they seem like actors? Zack, sitting beside him, began to feel moved, but Agras remained expressionless. chin propped on his hand in skepticism. The demon laughed with delight, threatening to pluck the last morsel from the children's mouths if Cowren tried to deceive him. Ogres added a final point. Cowren's business would collapse in a few weeks, and then he'd put the children to work in the mines. He held up 2 fingers, offered a price of 52 nexus per crystal, and told Cowren to consider himself lucky that he was even willing to do business. Cowren slumped over the table and sighed, admitting Thayer Corporation was indeed in trouble, and he couldn't accept such a high price. His eyes suddenly shimmered oddly as Cowren switched to a saccharine tone and offered 35 coins, calling it his most generous price. The veins on Ogres's forehead twitched repeatedly at the absurd number. Ogres leapt up, pointed at Cowren, and shouted that the sly green-skinned dwarf was a cheat. Cowren wasn't backing down either. He slammed the table and rose to argue with all his might. They yelled at each other in a blazing atmosphere. Cowren accused Ogres of ruining the deal, while Ogres insulted Cowren for trying to cheat someone like Zack who knew nothing about prices. Zack sat between the 2 loudspeakers with a pounding head, thinking that although Ogres was keeping him from getting ripped off, the insults were hard to swallow. Furious, Ogres snapped at Alan to fetch him a whip so he could teach the dwarf a lesson in devilish negotiation. Cowren refused to be outdone. He called for Becca to bring a rope, saying he'd rather hang himself than endure such injustice. The shouting and arguing echoed across the area, leaving onlookers staring in bewilderment. After an exhausting round of verbal sparring, they finally settled on a price of 47 coins. Cowren and Ogres collapsed onto the table, panting. Zack breathed a sigh of relief, thanking the heavens that his eardrums were finally at peace. Ogres began directing Alan to collect the crystals and organize additional mining teams to prepare for payment. Cowren wearily rubbed his nose and ordered his subordinates to ready counting machines and Nexus currency for payment. Everyone hurried into action as a busy atmosphere took over the mansion grounds. Zack carried a large bag forward, announcing that the first batch of Nexus crystals was ready for handover. Cowren's eyes widened in shock when he saw 11,000 glittering crystals in the bag, calculating the enormous sum of over 500,000 nexus. Cowren's 2 children stood timidly at a distance, curious about the strange guest. Zack waved them over. He gave each child a bag of cookies, surprising and delighting them. Zack told the children not to tell anyone because he didn't want others, especially Ogres, to think he was soft-hearted. 3 days later, at the entrance of a mine tunnel deep within the rocky cliff, the sound of picks striking rock rang steadily in the darkness of the mine. Zack wiped the sweat from his brow, taking a break after some hard work inside the tunnel. He turned to Alan and asked, even though she had explained much, what exactly the system was. Alan smiled and said she had been waiting for him to ask that question. She closed the book and began to tell of an ancient era, billions of years before the system existed. In that primordial age, cultivators had to discover the heavenly Tao themselves to reach immortality, with no guidance at all. At that time, there was a mighty empire unrivaled, reigning atop the cultivation world for millennia. At the head of the empire was the infinite celestial emperor, a man who had reached the pinnacle of cultivation and aspired to turn all creation into his domain. But that ambition meant war, a conflict that dragged on for millions of years, draining the great empire's strength. Endless wars left the empire's armies depleted, placing the celestial emperor in a desperate position. To solve this, they created an artificial entity capable of connecting to every cultivator, forcing them into a training regimen to become true war machines. Billions of the strongest cultivators gathered and poured enormous energy into this entity, linking it directly to the heavenly Tao. The activation succeeded spectacularly, and the cosmic entity finally spoke its first words to the world. Zack held his breath, curious to know what it said at that momentous instant. Alan looked at him solemnly and replied, "Insufficient energy." Those were the first 2 words the system declared. What followed was the beginning of a dark era. Something went horribly wrong, and the system began wildly draining energy from all nearby beings to compensate. It devoured the universe's natural energy, turning sacred lands into dead deserts and slaughtering the cultivators who had helped activate it. Cultivation became unimaginably difficult, and even the infinite celestial emperor did not escape death at the hands of his own creation. The great emperor was thereafter remembered only as a sinner who plunged the cosmos into darkness, until one day, everything suddenly changed. Energy abruptly flooded back into the universe, and the system spoke for the second time with the announcement, "Initialization complete." The system finished its preparations and began carrying out its original purpose of training warriors, but now it also controlled and classified the heavenly Tao itself. Traditional cultivation through meridians was erased, replaced by levels and stages of power-ups digitized with the familiar ding notifications. Alan said it was this dictatorship that led factions like the tech cult to call the system the prison of the universe, blocking other development paths like technology or firearms. Zack wondered why Earth had been pulled in, Was Earth once part of that ancient empire? Alan smiled and shook her head, affirming that Earth wasn't even in the same universe as that empire. The system not only inherited the Celestial Emperor's goals but relentlessly expanded, invading new universes to find more warriors. Zack still didn't grasp it. He wondered why it affected merchants, shops, and monsters when it was originally meant to train cultivators. Alan explained that the system had changed many times throughout its history to adapt. And to understand those changes, they had to mention the heretics, rare figures capable of breaking multiversal laws and bending reality to their will. Very little information existed about the early heretics. Even his true name had been erased from the annals of history. Alan concluded with a haunting name that left Zack stunned. He was only known by the title, the First Heretic.